Good evening and welcome to the January 17th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll start by introducing the board. To my far right is Jerry Patamas. He is an associate member of the board. To my immediate right is Ken Foreman. He is the vice chairman of the board. My name is TJ Hurry. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Ed Van Kuren. He is a full voting member. And to his left is Bob Dugan, who is an associate member. Also with us tonight is Noreen Stockman, who is our zoning administrator, and Jill Robbins, who is our recording secretary. The purview of the Zoning Board of Appeals is to grant variances, special permits, and hear building commissioner appeals under the bylaws of the town of Falmouth. All the proceedings are being recorded to provide full and accurate minutes of all the meetings we have. Our deliberations are in the open in accordance with the Falmouth bylaws and the Attorney General's office. Members of the public, attorneys, agents, or representatives, due to time restraints and the number of applications, to all those speaking or representing applicants will explain the request. I also ask that you please discuss plans before the board in a timely manner, and any public input in favor or in opposition will speak only regarding the issues relevant to the applicant's request. Any issues brought up not relevant to the said cases would be interrupted by the board. As far as our process goes, as the chairman, I'll call any hearing that's been continued to date. We'll then announce the next hearing, introduce board members who are sitting on any hearings. I'll ask the clerk to read the petition into the record and provide any pertinent information, such as information from any town departments and correspondences to and from the board. I'll then ask the petitioner or the petitioner's representative to come up and introduce the project to us. We usually ask that to be held to 15 minutes. Vote could be extended upon request and vote of the board. The board will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, and then the general public will be asked if they have any questions in favor, against, or it might simply be a question of the project. During public comment, as the chairman, I will recognize people to speak. I ask you to please come up to the podium to the right here, provide your name and address for the record, and you can ask anything in question, anything in favor or in opposition of the project. Again, it just might simply be a question due to the nature of the project. I ask that you please refrain from any derogatory or personal remarks. Please ask your questions or comments, direct them to the board, and hopefully we can get an answer for you. After that's done, we could opt to close the hearing for a discussion among the board and possibly come to a decision on the matter. We'll then either call for a motion for the decision. We'll either continue the hearing to a date, time, and location certain, or close the hearing and take it under advisement. Would also want to note that majority rules with the board. Split votes, such as a 3-2 vote, is a failure to carry and would result in a denial of the project. Under Massachusetts general law, the applicant has 2 years to reapply to the board unless changes are substantially different. With that having been said, our agenda tonight, we have 1 continuation, 3 new hearings, and we also have items on our open meeting agenda. And due to the anticipated crowds tonight, I do see that this room is pretty crowded. There's a few people in the hallway as well. We anticipated a large crowd, and this afternoon we were able to secure an overflow location, which is the Herman Room at the library. Unfortunately, traditional overflow rooms that we usually have located here in Town Hall, they're actually taken tonight. So we were unable to accommodate anyone on site. But just so everyone knows, the Herman Room is available. There's live coverage of this meeting at that room being held right now. So with all that having been said, we will start with continuation 97-18, Captain's Quarters at Surfside Resort Condominium.
This hasn't been written?
I don't know if it's been,
No, because they continued.
Oh, sorry?
Yeah.
all right, so we'll have to read it in.
Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11, Chapter 40A, the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that, wait a minute, this isn't the, nope, no, that's the wrong one. I thought this was already read in. Being all persons, being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals, Section 11, Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified the Captain's Quarters at Surfside Resort Condominium Association, Falmouth, Mass. Applied for the Zoning Board of Appeals for a modification, special permit 120-98, and a variance pursuant to Sections 240-3, 240-203 of the Code of Falmouth to construct an elevator where the elevator shaft tower will exceed 35 feet in height on the subject property known as 241 Grand Avenue, Mass. Engineering Department, the application was reviewed for the impact on right-of-ways with the standard comments. The work shown on the plan on Nantucket Avenue will require a permit right-of-way. Additional detail will be required for the permit. No other comments. That's it.
And for the purposes of this application and all applications tonight, there's only 5 of us tonight, so I'll be appointing both Bob and Jerry, the alternate members, as being in on every application tonight. So, Attorney Ament?
Thank you, Mr. Hurry, members of the board. I'm Bob Ament. I'm an attorney here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicant. The applicant is the Condominium Association of the Captain's Quarters at Surfside Resort. It's located in Falmouth Heights on Grand Avenue across the street from the town beach, bounded by 3 other streets, Worcester Avenue and Nantucket Avenue and Indiana. And on the screen, in 3 directions from you, is a site plan prepared by Holmes and McGrath showing the property. Now, the property was developed first in 1954 as a motel, and eventually, after a special permit was granted in 1998, a 3rd floor was added, the building was expanded, and turned into timeshare commercial accommodations. So the property presently has 33 units on the 3 floors. When it was built, it was conforming in terms of lot coverage, 35% lot coverage. The building is in the residential district. Commercial accommodations were then and still are allowed by special permit in the residential district. So this was allowed by special permit. And it was allowed to be 35 feet, which was then and still is the height limit. All these years, there's been no elevator access to the building. The clientele, the owners of the timeshare units, have aged like all of us, and increasingly the expectation of the owner, the condominium association, the manager, is that there be access, because they get a lot of complaints from the people who are either disabled or elderly for failure to have such access. So the goal has been to install an elevator at the property to serve the building. The building wasn't designed for an elevator, and the logical place to put the elevator is in a corner. Now, the laser doesn't work on that glass. I'm going to get eventually a long pointer, but I did find in my pocket from the last time a chopstick. So that'll help a little bit. So presently, there is a driveway that runs between these two buildings. There are a couple of units in that building. That driveway will be eliminated, and there will be a 10-foot wide structure added to the building that will contain the elevator. It serves no other purpose than that. There is a storage area on the first floor, but other than that, that's it. And at the request of the fire department, we're going to open up a curb cut along here onto Nantucket Avenue. There will be 2 more parking spaces as a result of these changes, both of them being handicap accessible parking spaces. The total lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking will actually be slightly reduced because of the elimination of that driveway between the buildings. But the lot coverage by structure will increase by 0.6% from 35% to 35.6%. Now, the allowed lot coverage in a residential district was reduced some years ago to 20%, with 25% being possible with a special permit. But this property already has 35% building lot coverage legally, because that's what was allowed at the time the building was approved. That makes the property and makes the building a pre-existing non-conforming structure. And under state law and under Section 240-3 of our zoning bylaw, the Zoning Board of Appeals can allow an extension of a pre-existing nonconformance. And so we need to put this elevator on the building. The only place to put it really is at that corner of the building. It's the best place for it. And it does increase the lot coverage from non-conforming 35% to non-conforming 35.6%. Now, we did apply for a variance as well as a special permit because we were proposing to get the elevator tower above the existing roof line and then have a hipped roof on top of it. And I should be able, I hope, to successfully get us there. So this is a cover sheet to a set of plans prepared by Andrew Borghese of Integrata Architects. Andrew is here in the audience to answer any questions that you might have. But you can see on these plans what we're proposing to do. You do have plans in your file that showed a hip roof which extended the top of the new structure above the 35-foot line. Although we think there may be some additional maintenance requirements, possibly more problems for the owner of the property with a flat roof as opposed to the pitched roof, we've decided that we will just keep the structure below 35 feet. It's actually, I think, 34 feet, 4 or 5 inches. And so that's what's before you. Arguably, given the Americans with Disabilities Act, the addition of an elevator like this is, might arguably be a by right thing because reasonable accommodations have to be made. But you have the ability to approve the very small expansion of the footprint to do this. I don't want to take more time than is needed, especially because you have a busy agenda. But you can see what we've done. I think that the flat roof actually is going to look pretty good over there, but it's conforming, and the only nonconformance, and it's not a new nonconformance, has to do with lot coverage. And therefore, with that, I'd ask you, if you can tonight, to grant the special permit to allow this addition to the captain's quarters.
Thank you, Attorney Ahmet. We'll turn it to board questions now. Bob, do you want to start us off?
The only question I have is the PVC rail system, that's just decorative, that there's not an actual deck there?
That's correct.
That's the only question I have.
Ed, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Ken?
So you said you're adding 2 parking spaces?
Yes.
Um,
And the driveway that extended between the 2 buildings has been eliminated. And that gives us room to put a couple more parking spaces. One parking space is going to be one handicap parking space. It is up on Indiana Avenue right there. And there'll be another handicap space here. There already is one.
So those are the 2 that you're adding? The 2 that you just mentioned?
Yes.
And is the space that was between the buildings, is that going to be paved or landscaped, or what?
It will be a walkway with landscaping. So there will be a walkway. Maybe Stephen Furr, who's the Director of Resorts for the manager, has more information about that?
Sir, if you do speak,
What
can you
Mr.
please come up
Furr
to
is
the
saying
podium?
is, yes, there'll be landscaping there. It will be match the landscaping that exists there today.
So I guess my question is, how have you managed without those 2 parking spaces? What's the need to add them because of the lot coverage issues?
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess I would ask Stephen to respond to that about the need for more handicap spaces than they've had.
Or converting some existing into handicap?
Do you have thoughts about the amount of parking? Need all those spaces?
Steve Furr, representing the management of Captain's Quarters Resort. Well, there's about, I think there's 33 units in total, and typically we have, at any given time, 4 employees on site. Plus, every owner that comes in residence may have more than 1 car. The parking's always an issue. The spaces would literally be taking up pavement that would already be there, although we could take that pavement out in part of it. The part that's on the inner part is going to be paved straight across, and the driveway that used to continue through the buildings would be removed. So it would be blank there. If you said don't do it, it would still be pavement. It would just be not striped for parking. So,
Well, I mean, it's possible that you could eliminate a space on the end and add some landscape, but how many parking spaces total are there?
right now, I believe there are 34 or 35 at most for 33 units. Yeah.
All right, that's my question.
Jerry, any questions?
Quick question, I might have an old plan. You said you're not going above 35 feet, but there's a plan here dated October that shows it going up to, with the cupola, to 37 feet 4 inches.
That's right. We're choosing to seek your approval of the plan I've just shown you with a flat roof that does not exceed 35 feet.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure.
Therefore, we wouldn't need the variance, and as long as a special permit can be granted for the lot coverage, we would be able to withdraw the request for the variance.
And was that plan the one that was submitted today? I didn't have a chance to open it up, or yesterday.
Yes, that plan was submitted this week.
So we have the correct site plan with the height and everything? Okay, thank you.
The architectural plans.
Yes,
The site plan isn't changed at all.
architectural, I
Get that.
misspoke.
I guess I would like to point out that the standard for granting a special permit to extend a pre-existing non-conforming use or structure is whether the new condition will be substantially more detrimental than the existing condition is to the neighborhood. And adding an elevator for handicap access to this building, and I don't think that the fact that we're not reducing existing parking, but taking advantage of this to have a couple more handicap spaces could in any way suggest that the board should find that this is more detrimental, let alone substantially more detrimental. It is not. This is a significant improvement, and we're not creating a new nonconformance. We're simply going from 35.0 to 35.6. And sure, we could reduce the number of spaces. We could take several spaces away, and we would bring the lot coverage closer to the current standard. But that isn't necessary to meet the standard, and it's not a good idea to limit the parking. There isn't any parking available on the street itself in this particular area, and people who come to these facilities want to make sure that there's a space and they have visitors.
Anything else, Chair?
No.
Anything else from members of the board?
No, not I.
Okay. To public comment, any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? All right. I think everyone's here for something else on the agenda. All right, back to the board then, if there's one final chance. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? Seeing none, back to the board. How would the board like to proceed?
I don't see any need for further discussion, so I'd like to close the hearing, and then we can
Second it.
deliberate. Motion to close the hearing.
Okay, motion to close by Jerry and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Think this warrants some board discussion at all, or? Ken, you might have some
Well, the
concerns
only,
about the
only
project.
issue I have is, they're at 80%, 82.3% lot coverage, 35.6%, whereas 40 is allowed, 35.6 by structures. And they're adding parking, and I actually count 40 parking spaces, unless I'm miscounting on the plan. So I just wondered if we might get a little more green space on the site.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I think, given the size, the location, I think this is modest changes, doesn't even approach the additional green space. To me, is not as important as potentially another handicap space. And then just given where we are on the heights there, that's a asphalt island for most of them, you know what I'm saying? So, I'm not sure what the added green space would be. It's almost de minimis going from 35 to 35.6. I think the lot coverage total is, again, minimal in my, so I'm not sure I could agree with the need to reduce 2 parking spaces for the addition of landscape.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's not reducing, they're increasing.
Right. And Ken, I understand your issue with the project, and it's interesting because usually we see residential projects and homeowners attempting to max out their space on certain lots, but here we have a commercial project adding an elevator shaft, arguably to be ADA compliant. And with that, they're including 2 new handicap spaces, so that kind of goes along with what they're proposing.
It does.
So
They could, I guess my question was whether they could convert some existing into handicap.
anyone
but-
on this side? Oh, I'm sorry, Ken, didn't
That-
mean to cut
that's
you
all.
off.
I think the extra spaces would be well used.
I mean, you have 33 units now. You're going to have guests that are going to show up on property, and you are getting a handicap space. It is, like Jerry said, very tight in that area of the Heights. They've redone Worcester Court, so they've really eliminated any kind of parking now in Worcester Court with the new sidewalk addition. So in this case, I don't have an issue with it.
Motion Wait, no, I don't know if Ken wants to rebuttal anything.
Nope. I've rebutted.
Motion to approve?
Motion approved was made by Jerry. Is there a second for right now?
Second.
Second by Ed. All right, moving on to findings.
It's not substantially more detrimental under 240,
260.
240-3C. And I think it meets the requirements under 240 it does meet the requirement, 240-2116. I don't want to necessarily elaborate them, but I think they are, are they adding 2 handicap or 1 handicap? I thought I heard 1, but 2 spaces, one of which was going to be handicap. Someone could nod their head. So I guess they're adding a handicap space at least. Yeah.
They're eliminating a driveway. They're adding a new access off of Nantucket Ave. They did also apply for a variance, but removed that because they were able to stay within the 35-foot height limit.
Say that the addition of the elevator enhances the utilization of the site for the
Most of
property owners, I guess, if it's a
Definitely, yeah.
timeshare. Anything else?
They're relocating, well, I guess it's not they're going to relocate it per the Board of Health, if I remember the plan correctly. So that's, and I don't think engineers said anything about drainage.
No.
Okay.
But there were comments, though, with the addition of the driveway, right? Do we have to?
Yes. No, there's a question, was a permit for work in the public right away.
All right. Any other findings? All right, how about conditions?
Further revised plans?
That's the one that shows the 35-foot.
Yep, showing the flat roof, 35 feet.
So per the revised plans showing the 35-foot elevator tower,
It was actually 34 something.
34,
34.
34 and change.
34, 4 3/4.
All right. Any other conditions?
I don't think we need as-built, but throw it out there. I think it'd be kind of obvious if they go over.
Well, bring up a good point. It is close to the height limit.
Right. I think so.
Might as well do an as-built.
All right. As built. Anything else?
It does it.
That's
All
it.
right. Motion to approve was made by Jerry and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will-
Unanimous. I'm sorry?
John?
You're voting in favor? Okay, unanimous.
Thank you.
Ed seconded.
There you go.
Now we get this one.
All right, up next, we have a new hearing, application 112-18, Petite, 22 Anchor Lane in East Falmouth.
Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Lauren S. Pettit of Southport, Connecticut, applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Section 240-3 of the Code of Falmouth to construct an addition creating habitable space within the pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling on the subject property known as 22 Anchor Lane in East Falmouth. Comments from the Board of Health, okay, a 4-bedroom septic system installed 2011. Project shows 4 total bedrooms. Engineering, the same, same standard comments about stormwater drainage. The Water Department, this is a single-family structure, there's no water service impact. And that's it.
For the applicant tonight?
How you doing?
How are you?
Just here for the permit.
Sure.
For
If you
the
don't mind
addition.
introducing yourself?
Jeff Devlin, sorry. Central Construction, the builder. We're just applying for a 16 by 30 addition.
All right. Anything else you want to tell us off the bat, or?
Pretty basic.
Okay. Turn it to board questions. Jerry, do you want to start us off?
No, no questions.
All right, Ken?
So the nonconformity here is front yard setback or what?
It's almost 40 feet.
No, the existing though.
The addition.
Right, why are you here?
I have no idea. I was told to come.
Okay.
Can you find out?
I can
what the,
leave.
What the
That's all right. You've gone to the trouble to get here.
pre-existing nonconformity is?
Yeah, I don't see. 20, oh, 20.
It's gonna be front yard setback, because it's 24/7 versus 25.
24/7, okay, I got it.
The
Fine.
existing.
Thank you.
All set.
Yeah.
So it's 24/7, and they should be...
24/7 existing, and there's actually, it looks like stone steps, I don't know if they count.
They're not changing it though, right?
No changes to that. Everything else is.
All right. Ed, do you have any questions?
No, plenty of room for it.
You're all set. Bob, any questions?
Yes, so just have one question. On the shed shows as just over 100 square feet.
Yes.
It's at an 8.9, so that would need to be moved to meet a 10-foot setback. So did you plan on moving that?
We can.
No, that's the only question I have.
And what's the purpose of the addition?
Master bedroom, dining area.
And the beds are going to remain the same, bedroom count's going to remain the same?
Yes.
So we're all set with Title V and all that?
Yes. New septic in 2011.
And was that rated, what was that rated for, do you know?
4 bedroom.
4 beds? I think that does it for me. Turn it to public questions, if you don't mind. Any members of the public have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? All right, one last time, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, back to the board. How would the board like to proceed?
I move to close.
Second.
Move to close by Ken and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What are we thinking?
I'll make a motion in favor.
All
I'll
right,
second.
Ken moves in favor, second by Jerry. Move on to findings.
So, there's no increase in the nonconformity.
Lot coverage, good.
Yeah. So lot coverage, I guess, is well below the 20%, it's at 14.9, 4.9, I think. Obviously, this enhances the usability of the property. Also well below the ridge height here is proposed at 18.8, so that's also very reasonable.
Okay.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
All right, so does
Can we just add to that, that just the,
Oh, the findings
Existing-
is the shed is, yeah, well, Robert's point, the shed is slightly encroaching into the side yard setback,
no,
being
relocate.
greater than 100 square feet, and that they have agreed to move it to 10.
And the bedrooms are at 4, but the septic will carry it from 2011.
No change. Right.
Right. Bedroom count's gonna remain the same, but the addition's for a master bed.
Gotta recalculate the square foot of the shed.
It says right here,
101.
101, yeah. So then conditions would be, as per plan, moving the shed, bedroom count, limited to 4.
No change in bedroom count, right?
Yeah, well, why don't we just say limited?
Limit to 4.
Yeah, we'll say limited to 4.
They have a new septic tank?
2011.
2011.
I could go under findings, actually.
Sure could.
I thought that's, okay. Oh, we on findings?
No, we've moved on to conditions.
You guys are fast.
Yeah, we're trying.
We're trying.
This gentleman wants to get out of here.
Why is everyone here?
Not for this edition. All right, so we have our findings and conditions. Anything else?
That's-
Motion to approve was made by Ken and second by Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Congratulations.
Have a great night.
You too. All right, up next, we have a new hearing, application 114-18, Monroe, 26 Ferry Lane in Wacoit.
Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11, Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Karen B. Monroe of Wayland, Massachusetts, applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Section 243C of the Code of Falmouth to raise existing dwelling, guest house, garage, and construct a single-family dwelling with an attached garage on subject property known as 26 Ferry Road, Wacoit. Standard stormwater runoff comments. Board of Health, proposed three-bedroom home, first and second floors only shown with the three-bedroom. No other comments?
Did we get anything from Concom?
Yes,
There was
yes.
an order of conditions.
There was
It's,
nothing.
Dated December 21st.
You go all the way to the back, that's what.
That's okay. I mean, they have conditions.
Yes,
Yeah.
quite a few.
Yeah.
All right, so that's in the file.
Yeah, it's in the file.
Okay,
13 conditions.
very good. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. And for the applicant tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jeff Oppenheim. I'm here for the applicant. There are some people, neighbors of the applicant or in the hallway. I don't know if some of the good people from Woods Hole could yield so that they can hear the presentation. That, I think, they would appreciate that. I don't know, there's probably
If
at
anyone
least
could be
6
so
or 8.
kind, you'd have my appreciation and the board's as well, and the applicant's.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Lot coverage calculations. I didn't see any of that.
This is usually where they would. This is Conscom. This is where. Yes. Existing 13.6 proposed,
One of three.
existing. But it's not saying what,
I hope they come in now.
well,
Close to the
So I
same.
could begin,
We'll
Mr.
give them
Chairman.
time to filter in, Attorney Oppenheim.
that's a good question. I think it's worth asking.
Yeah.
It's a raise and reconstruct, so maybe this is the, what it's gonna be after the raise.
room for you if you'd like to come in.
That's the existing.
If I could begin,
One
Mr.
present
Chairman.
and accounted for?
I think
Here it is.
everyone's here.
14 goes to
So again,
14.5.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Oppenheim for the applicant. I'm here with my client Karen Monroe, who's sitting in the second seat here. She's the mother of two teenage boys. They live in Wayland, and they're planning on moving here to Falmouth, hopefully to a new home built on the site that they've owned for several years. The project architect is Yarosh Associates, and our engineer is Falmouth Engineering. Mike Borselli, unfortunately, has a scheduling conflict and is not able to be here this evening. So we filed on behalf of Mrs. Monroe under Section 243C to raise and reconstruct the building on this plan. This is the as-built plan here. Shows a residence, which is this structure here, and a garage with an apartment above it in this structure here. It's an existing non-conforming three-bedroom home with a one-bedroom apartment above the garage. Structure was built in 1924, and it's pre-existing for several reasons, pre-existing non-conforming for several reasons. First, it has two residences on the lot. Both structures are within 25 feet of the setback to Ferry Road. The accessory structure is located in the front yard setback, and it is within 50 feet of a tidal river, specifically Sea Pit River. So those are all of our nonconformities. And as a result of the excellent plan prepared by Mike Borselli that you'll see in a moment, we have eliminated all of the nonconformities except one, which is the distance to the tidal river. And that nonconformity we've lessened by 23.1 feet. So we go from the existing 13.9 feet to 37 feet as designed. Quickly go through existing floor plans. Nope, that's not it. I'm going to go right to the elevations. You have in your file the existing floor plan, which is a three-bedroom house on the water and a one-bedroom apartment over the garage. So this is the property as designed by Walter Yarosh. This elevation here is the west elevation, which, the top elevation, which faces away from the water. The east elevation is the elevation that faces to the water. It's the one with a lot of glass here at the bottom. And see if we can show you the rest of the elevations. South elevation, which is the one on the Ferry Road side, and the north elevation, which is obviously the opposite side, furthest away from Ferry Road. It's a two-floor structure with 3 bedrooms. Two bedrooms upstairs. This is the ground floor here on the left, garage, TV room, master bedroom suite, and living area on the ground floor with covered porch and screen porch on this corner of the house. Second floor is where the Monroe teenagers will be residing, 2 bedrooms and a family room and a couple bathrooms. The basement is going to be unfinished except for a bathroom. There's a utility room down there, and that is the basement plan. You can see with a bath and a storage area, mechanical areas. This is the, gives you an idea of the existing here. This is what I was looking for. This is the garage with the apartment above, existing condition. This is the main house, a view from the dock with the photo there, and the front elevation photo and a picture of the apartment from the backyard. So this is the existing floor plan. This is the proposed site plan. You see that there's only one structure here. The garage is here, driveway coming off of Ferry Road up here, new septic system designed to Title V standards, out of the 100-foot setback from the tidal water, and that conforms to all the setbacks, as I previously said, except to the Sea Pit River. And we've been improving it, but it's still not at 50 feet as designed. We submitted to the Conservation Commission a detailed planting plan, which was approved. They have issued an order of conditions, which you have in your file. And I've also given the board a fact sheet, which I can give you quickly copies again.
Thank you.
Sorry, Bob. Yeah, it's fine.
Shows existing conditions and proposed conditions in a chart format. I think it's pretty easy to see that we're improving in all categories. New home will be slightly larger than the existing structures, but the proposed structure is 14.5% of the lot, which is well below the maximum 20% allowed by lot coverage. The overall lot coverage is only being increased by 0.8%. The average height as proposed is under the 35-foot limit by about a half a foot, as measured by the architect. And again, the substandard septic system will be upgraded and located 100 feet from the wetlands. So, as the board is aware, you're supposed to examine the standards of 240, 216. And I'd just like to run through those quickly for you. You have to find that the proposed use will not have adverse effects which overbalance its beneficial effects on either the neighborhood or our community. Your determination shall indicate that the proposed use will be in harmony with the general purpose and the intent of our bylaw after consideration of the following. Number one, adequacy of the site in terms of size of the proposed use. I believe the site is more than adequate. We've reduced all the nonconformities except the setback to the river. We've reduced the number of bedrooms from 4 to 3. We meet all the lot coverage and setback issues, again, except for to the river. As far as the suitability for the site, it's historically been a residence. It's actually had 2 residences on it historically, and that's what, in part, makes it non-conforming. It's in a residential neighborhood. We're going to continue the residential use. We're going to hopefully make it into a year-round residential use. As far as the impact on traffic flow and safety, we don't think there is going to be an impact. It's presently a single-family home. It will be a single-family home when we get done. There will be year-round use of the property if you grant this special permit. Now it's been used more for seasonal purposes. The impact on neighborhood visual character, including views and vistas, we think we're going to improve the views and vistas because we're taking a almost 100-year-old home and we're making it into a beautiful modern home, consistent with what the board and the community is seeing for waterfront properties in Falmouth. Yarosh Associates has done an excellent job. There's a lot of shingle on this house, except for the west elevation, which faces the water, which has lots of glass. The adequacy of the sewage system, which is the next consideration for you. Again, we're upgrading the Title V, and we're complying with the setback from the river. We have town water on the site, and drainage is going to be managed by multiple dry wells that are on the proposed plan. Adequacy of utilities and public services. We have town water, and we're going to upgrade the utilities coming to the site consistent with new construction. We don't see any issues there. We are not having any impact on the adequacy of the supply of affordable housing by doing this project. The decision of the planning board under Article 38 and 39 under multiple review, those are non-issues for the board. That's, the search and rescue corridor overlay district and the site plan review. Those are non-issues for this particular application. And also for the compliance with the performance requirements, Article 22, the parking requirements, with a 3-bedroom home, we're required to have 2 spaces. We have those spaces within the garage, plus we have an area, a driveway outside the garage, so we more than meet the requirements of 2 parking spaces. And the landscaping, there's no landscaping requirements from this board, but we had very extensive landscaping requirements from the Conservation Commission. We're planting, I think, over 100 plants as part of this project. And if the board is interested, I'd be happy to share with you that landscape plan. But it's really, I think, less of an issue for this board than it was for the Conservation Commission. So in sum, we're taking a property that has lots of nonconformities, we're eliminating most of them, we're reducing the one setback to the river, but we still will be slightly nonconforming. And we're hoping that the board will grant approval so my client and her two sons will be able to move to our community. I appreciate your time. Very happy to try to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Attorney Oppenheim. Bob, do you want to start us off?
Just on the, so on the walkout basement, you're adding a bath. What are the other plans? Are you planning on finishing off that space, or?
No, there's no plans to finish that space.
That's all I have.
No questions.
With regard to the basement level, no plans to finish it off. Would you be amenable to condition?
Three-bedroom condition? Yes.
In regard to the, that space there, if it remains unfinished, would you be amenable to that condition as well?
Unfinished for, as a bedroom, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Right.
But, you know, perhaps at some point it may be finished as a, you know, playroom or something like that.
Understandable. Thank you. Ken, any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to know the capacity of the new septic system that you put in. Is that Board of Health?
It meets the Board of Health requirements.
Right, of
Yeah.
course it does, but
Hold on
Is
one
it
second,
a-
I might be able to answer that. So,
Do we have the Board of Health permit?
Yeah.
let
Proposed
me see if I can
three-bedroom.
enlarge this a little, because I'm having a hard time reading.
There's no, they don't have any problem, the Board of Health didn't have any problems. It's very difficult to read it.
right, I'm just trying to establish whether, so, yeah, you're willing to accept the three-bedroom.
It's
zoning
designed for a
limit,
three-bedroom.
But I'm just.
Right. Total
trying to
daily
See
flow,
if the flow can accommodate more than
330 gallons per day.
That's the.
Yep.
Okay,
Say that again, 300?
330 gallons per day, so it's,
For three-bedroom?
Right,
Right.
110 gallons per bedroom.
right?
Oh, that's right.
Right, Jerry?
No, I was marked by factor two. Yeah,
Yep.
that's standard Title
Right,
V.
Standard
Say-
Title V.
Okay, so that's really the ultimate limit.
Right.
In terms of bedrooms. That's my only question.
Jerry, any questions?
No, I think it's a good project.
Okay, we'll turn it to public comment. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? Sir? And if you could please state your name and address for the record, and if you have anything, we can stamp it through the clerk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stamp one.
And public comment is usually limited to 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Bob Whalen, reside at 110 Seapit Road. We butt Ms. Monroe's house. And we're here to raise some objections to her proposed plan, which the gentleman's just gone through. We're concerned about the size, design, and the siting of the proposed structure. And we think it'll have an aggregate detrimental effect on the neighborhood. The house is proposed 3,110 square foot structure. Would be almost 60% larger than her current 1,952 square foot house, and about 70% larger than the average existing house in the neighborhood, which I'll explain how we define the neighborhood. If the project proper account, in our mind, is taken of the walkout storage area, the proposed structure would be more than 4,000 square feet, which would be more than twice the size of her current house, almost 120% larger than the average house in the neighborhood, and about 75% larger than the current largest house in the neighborhood. These, size matters. The size and height of the proposed structure and the intent to move it back from the waterfront, which is a virtue from an environmental point of view, has adverse effects for the neighbors. It's on a relatively compact lot of 19,998 feet. And so that when you move it back, you lose certain things. One, you become much closer to the neighbors in both directions, both to the north and to the west, and very close particularly on the northern side. That leads to greater obstruction of the current sightlines and vistas, and it's reduced backyard space, which also the backyard space is now buffering the neighbors' properties. Now they'll be, very much more in proximity than they were in the past. And as an ancillary concern, we have worries about whether or not she's left enough space, or the architects have left enough space for her to store her boats, cars, et cetera, which she now parks on the public right-of-way to a large extent. So in our mind, Ms. Monroe's proposed structure is dramatically larger and not compatible with the neighboring houses, which may suffer a loss of value as a result of the building such an anomalous dwelling. You've already been through that she's seeking a special permit to raise her existing non-conforming house and replace it with a new but still non-conforming structure. So we're concerned with the trade-offs that have been made. Okay, we admit it's been brought back from the bay, or the Seabed River, I guess, in that sense, but at the expense of crowding, the neighbors even more so. We looked at the criteria as stated by the board and what they looked at, and it heavily emphasizes whether something is detrimental to a neighborhood or not, but doesn't give a lot of guidance as to what a neighborhood is. So in the note, I provided a definition of a neighborhood as we derived it from the conditions there and what you refer to as commonly accepted zoning principles. And the important features there are that it be be more or less contiguous, that it be both be social interaction or political interaction as well as geographic, and that there be compatibility among the various architectural components of it. As you know, a lot of us grew up, and many of us remember that, damn, you can do just about anything you want with your neighbors. I mean, to your neighbors or for your neighbors on your own property. But as a growing concern now with, people building houses which neighbors feel are invasive in a sense. And the movement has been, I think, more towards neighborhood compatibility than it perhaps was earlier on. And so we put together a database, which we have provided you, and I will not go through in excruciating detail. But we drew it on the basis that the effective neighborhood, by the commonly accepted definitions, extended on Ferry Road, both the private right-of-way portion, the public portion up to Childs River Road from the bay. Then the section of Seapet Road, which goes from the northern end of Circle Drive to the southern end of Nichols Road. And it came up with a dozen houses which are fairly representative of the neighborhood in which will be affected and which meet the criteria of a neighborhood. Now, I stress that a neighborhood is the operative both in your criteria and in planning purposes, and not a survey of comparable houses. This is not for that purpose. These houses are typical of the thing, and as you can see, there's a distribution of those houses. We looked at both the houses from two perspectives. One's proposal A, as you'll see in the chart, and that is the 3110 square foot, and the other is the 4,000, which we believe is more indicative of the real size of the house. And frankly, have a little difficulty believing that even with the conditions, it'll be hard to maintain that as a storage space. It may, I think it will evolve into a bedroom. There are only 2 bedrooms on the upper floor, for example. If you have guests, where do you put them? Kick one of the boys out, I guess, or something along that line. But I doubt that that's what's going to happen. So, at the last page, I gave you the distribution of the neighborhood finished space using the houses that we defined as being in the neighborhood, the contiguous neighborhood that's been there. And as you can see, proposal A, which is the 3110, is still dwarfs the existing houses. It's much bigger, almost twice as big as the average house in the neighborhood. And if you accept our argument as to the 4,000 square foot version, it's even more egregious. If you look at the square foot proposed, finished space as percent of the average house, again, you get the same story, but, from a different angle and perspective. So we conclude that the house is simply too big for the size of the lot and for the secondary consequences of making it larger and further set back, which impinges on the neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen.
Huh?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Ma'am?
Good evening, Mr. Foreman, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Bob's wife, actually. We own the cottage abutting the Monroe house and have been there for 30 years. I would like to speak to the issue of impaired view and vista in the neighborhood. As Bob said, the proposed 3-story house is pulled back from the water by about 24 feet, but it makes it closer to us. Our backyards are adjoining. There is no buffer in between. There's no street. We're very close. With the elevation, it would be, the new proposed house would be 12 feet higher than their current house. So instead of a view of trees and a charming house with a red roof, all we would see to the southeast is a 60-foot wall. And I have pictures of this.
Could give it to the clerk, you can stamp it in. Thank you.
Thank you.
In fact, even from our second-story balcony, our view of the trees and of a bit of Washburn Island and the Osprey Nest would be obliterated. On the picture, the right side, it shows the current house. Imagine that pulled back 24 feet and 12 feet higher. There would be nothing on the right side of the picture. They would be in our face. On a different lot with plenty of buffer between the adjoining backyards, or if there were a street in between, this 3-story home might work. It's just not appropriate for the Ferry Road neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whalen. Any other members of the public have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? Seeing none. Attorney Oppenheim, perhaps you'd like to address the issues brought up by abutters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the neighbors do not have a view easement over my client's property. I want to point that out to the board. Nor do they have the right to design the house of my clients. I have multiple pictures which I would like to present into evidence of houses that are of a similar size and nature that are being built along the Sea Pit River. It's not a surprise to this board that the waterfront property in our community is very valuable. And the smaller cottages, which were popular in the 1920s when my client's house was built, they're going by the wayside. And, that neighborhood is a throwback. We're beyond that. Whether this board or anyone in the audience likes it, we're not there. And these pictures show it. And I'd like to present them into evidence. These are all in the neighborhood, all large structures. As far as the loss of value, I don't see it. I see the opposite. As people upgrade their homes, the homes in the neighborhood become more valuable. They don't become less valuable. This is a tired, as you saw from the photos, this is a tired structure, almost 100 years old. 2 structures, nonconformities. Now we're going to a very up-to-date, modern construction. My client wants to move from Wayland, Mass. to Falmouth, Mass. with her 2 teenage sons. Her husband died 3 years ago. She wants to live here. And we hope that the board will see their way clear to allowing this project. I also want to point out to the board that we could design this property to comply with our zoning bylaws. If we do, this board has no say at all in our project, and we would be much closer to the neighbors who spoke this evening against the project, because we'd have to be 50 feet back from Sea Pit River. So, you know, they need to really think about whether they should be objecting to the location as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Oppenheim. Upsets. I'll allow it. If you could please come up to the podium.
My name's Katie Peterson. We have the property directly next door. We're the north elevation,
I'm sorry, what address is that?
108.
Thank you.
And while I don't really want to speak to this project, I just am sitting here feeling remarkably heartsick. This used to be we built our house in '72, and this used to be an incredibly friendly, congenial neighborhood, and I am just heartsick that there is so much animosity at this point. It's a fine house. It's a beautiful house. I love the house that's there right now. It's a gorgeous little arts and crafts style. I understand that Karen needs a bigger house. I really understand Bob and Carol's stuff. I just wish that the neighborhood could work together and bind together. We used to have clam bakes 2 or 3 a summer, and we barely even talk to each other anymore, and I'm heartsick over that. And that, to me, is the biggest sadness here for me. I actually think it's wonderful that Karen's moving further back from the water, even though she's coming much closer to our house. I think that the water is a dangerous place to be, and I'm delighted about that. It definitely brings her closer to us. I get it, and I understand why that's upsetting to some people, but I would just wish we could work it out.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Kind to each other.
Sorry, ma'am. Sure, well, take your time.
Hello, I'm Judy Laughlin. I live at 127 Sea Pit. Hi, Karen. Hi, everybody from the neighborhood. I'm a member of the Ferry Road neighborhood, this section of town. Can you hear me? My comments are a lot less sophisticated and detailed than my knowledgeable neighbors of all sorts. I am really concerned, and maybe the builders or designers can address for me, how we're going to protect the space that we do have and that we used to share together so well, and many of us are wishing we could all share together well in the future. I'm interested in having somebody speak to. I was looking at the shrubs that were facing, I don't know my easts and norths and souths down here, but there's a 40-foot right-of-way that goes down there. At least that's what I understand. And I'm wondering if, in fact, that is going to be protected. Right now, there's encroaching growth coming over from the properties. It would be nice if that were really defined. And I'm really hoping that 3 cars is going to do it. The boys are probably going to have some nice cars down there and friends and all that, and we welcome the parties. But I'm hoping that there's not going to be a lot of overflow out into the right-of-way, making it difficult for the rest of us to come down and use it and look at the water. We no longer have access to the water at the moment, but we like to go down and look at it, and we like to run into neighbors and chat and that sort of thing, including Karen and the boys, and all of us would love to be getting through some of this. So to the degree that I think I could be assured that the builders and designers took into consideration, now that they're moving up and back, what's happening over on the, I call it the west side, looking down Sea Pit Road, in terms of really making sure that we all get to enjoy that access.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, and just so you know, right away, it's usually a private property issue that this board doesn't have jurisdiction over, but perhaps Attorney Oppenheim has some information regarding that.
I don't
And I
know all
believe-
the ins and outs of right-of-ways and things. I
Right.
like to walk down there, I like to see my friends down there, and a lot of us would love to be going back to be able to do that. And I'm just hoping somebody could speak, perhaps you,
And
to
I,
the fact that those things have been taken into consideration.
thank you, and I think one of our board members might have had a question
No, I
for
think
you.
that was the question, what was taken away from the access? And I think.
Well,
you-
let's see what Attorney Oppenheim has to say.
If there's overflow of cars or trailers or boats out into the right-of-way, it makes it difficult for all of us and unnerving.
So, the project before you, it is not in the right-of-way. It is entirely on the property owned by my client. I think that's the answer to Mrs. Laughlin's inquiry. You know, I can't speak to the board as to who has rights over that right-of-way. It's a paper road. Ferry Road runs right into the ocean, literally. It was down there today. It's grass mainly. We're taking away our garage, which butts Ferry Road, which is very close to Ferry Road. We're moving it out of the setback. You know, we think that's a good neighborly thing to do. And the board should know that there's been, I guess, lots of litigation over that right-of-way. You know, we're a defendant in that litigation, but we have no axe to grind. I mean, you know, we don't think that we own the right-of-way. You know, it's a right-of-way. It's not, we don't have a fee interest in that land.
So I guess my question, because what I think I'm sensing, is that there's been utilization for storage of either vehicles or boats on the right-of-way. Is that true or not true?
Well-
Maintain order here.
Members of the public, it's
The
only
question-
please respond when I call upon you. Thank you.
I mean, I was there today. I didn't see any vehicles or any boats in the right-of-way today. I don't know if, you know, at some point, at some time, there was a vehicle stored there or a boat stored there.
Let me phrase a different question. Now you are constructing a new house with new driveway, additional probably storage area on the site. Is it anticipated that the vehicles and boats will be stored on your property?
I think the board should consider that my client will continue to exercise whatever legal rights she has in the right-of-way, okay? I don't want to limit those rights, and I don't think this board wants to limit those rights. And if there's problems regarding those rights, I think that's between the neighbors. It's in court now, has been in court for several years. It is not going to be resolved tonight or probably in the near future.
Okay.
I had a question. Is traditionally the right-of-way a walking right-of-way? People drive cars down there?
It looks like people are able to walk down the right-of-way to me, and it looks like it would be difficult to drive down it, although not impossible. It's mostly grass. I don't know that people are driving all the way to the water. You know, there's a riprap at the end of Ferry Road, which, you know, with a drop-off to the water.
Putting aside litigation, it would appear that people can continue to walk there even, I'm not saying there would be, even if there's a vehicle on the right-of-way.
My client is not preventing anyone from walking there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may? Yes. And I'll just ask you to please state your name and address for the record, and any comments that you do have, just make sure it pertains to zoning.
I'll try.
Thank you.
My name's Steve Johnson. I live at 109 Seapit Road. I want to just address two things here. One, the pictures of the large houses that were shown do not occur in the contiguous neighborhood that was defined by Mr. Whalen. They are down the street, they are in a different type of property, therefore they're not really relevant to the situation at hand. Secondly, regarding the right-of-way, we have a deeded statement in our deed that indicates that we have the right to use that right-of-way to go to the water. As Attorney Oppenheim said, it goes right to the ocean, yet we can't get there. And we have had several occasions, even in the past 2 weeks, where there was a trailer with some debris on it that was parked there for days. Now, could we walk around it? Yes, but it was encroaching on the right-of-way. And over the years, and we've only been here 3, we have noticed many times where there are vehicles, boats, and other vehicles of one sort or another that are parked in that right-of-way by the applicant, which does restrict our access to that right-of-way. I want the board to know that and to take that into consideration.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Oppenheim.
The board should know the seawall in front of my client's house is currently being repaired and replaced. And there are, there's a construction, there's construction vehicles, there's construction equipment on their dock right now. They have a permit to replace the seawall.
Any other questions from the board for the applicant?
No questions.
Sorry, usually it's, unfortunately, ma'am, when, just for the benefit of everyone in the room, usually when we take public comment, it's 2 minutes per person. It's once up, that's usually it. Any other comments or questions for the applicant from the board? Attorney Oppenheim, regarding any sort of right, for lack of a better word, that your client may have to this right away, is that in a deed or is it in some sort of document recorded at the Registry of Deeds?
Whatever rights they have are of record, Mr. Chairman. And again, this matter is in litigation in our land court. With all due respect to this board, this is not within the province of this board. And it's been years in litigation, and it's not going to be resolved anytime soon by our Zoning Board of Appeals, as much confidence as I have in all of you.
Thank you, Attorney Oppenheim.
Artfully done.
Any other questions from the board to Attorney Oppenheim regarding this project?
I'm happy to, does the board feel they have enough information? Because if so, I'll move to close.
Yeah, I think we have enough.
Yes.
Okay, so motion to close.
Second.
Move to close by Ken and second by Bob. Yeah. Like to have a discussion about the project
we need
before
to
we
vote?
proceed? Oh, I'm sorry. It's made by Ken, second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we can have a possible discussion about the project before we make a decision.
You can start if you want. I think community character is always difficult to evaluate. I live in the Heights, and the character of the Heights has changed. Some said it's improved. Others say it loses its quaintness. However, I do think the property owner is well within its right to construct what's before us. Neighbors don't have a right to a view. Unless there's a view easement, there's no view being obstructed from a public right-of-way. It's enhancing the property from our perspective, and that nonconformities are going away, except for the 50-foot setback to the river, and they're lessening that nonconformity. So, I mean, I feel, I have sympathy for the neighbors, but I don't think resolution is in our hands of what they may want. And I clearly don't want to touch the right-of-way since that's in litigation. And I don't think we generally do.
Thank you, Jerry. Ken, anything?
Yeah, so I think, you know, the purpose of zoning is to strike an appropriate balance between protecting the rights of the abutters and the rights of the property owner. And that's why we have specified setbacks, height limits, and so forth. In this particular case, with the exception of the setback, you know, from the water, which they've improved substantially, they conform in every way. So I think they've been careful to, you know, structure this to fit within the zoning framework, and that's what we're charged with, enforcing zoning. All of the rest of the issues in the neighborhood, unfortunate though they may be, they'll fall under our purview, and there's, you know, in particular, I note that the, you know, lot coverage is only modestly increasing. I mean, it's going from 13.6 to 14.5%. We've seen much more egregious projects than that, sometimes well into the 20%. Total lot coverage 15.2 to 16%. Again, well within the framework of zoning, where I think 40% is allowed, right? So, yeah, it's high. It's 30, you know, 34 plus feet from the water side. But again, our height limit is 35 feet, with the property owners within their rights. So I don't see any objections from the zoning perspective to this project. I think it's been carefully crafted.
And I tend to agree with you, Ken, and Jerry, both your
I
comments.
agree. I agree too.
It fits, it conforms.
Okay. And anything else has to be said about the project? How would the board like to proceed?
I'm willing to make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Go ahead. I'll let Ed second.
We'll give it to Ed. All right, so motion to approve by Ken and second by Ed. Moving on to findings.
So the setback from the tidal river is improving from 13 to 37 feet. All the side yard, front yard setbacks conform.
Being eliminated, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
any
yeah.
nonconformities have been eliminated. There's improvement to the septic, moving it further from water, within the height limit. And as I mentioned, the lot coverage is only modestly increasing.
I think it's clearly consistent with 240-3.
Correct, 240-16, it is.
Right, and 240-3.
It's 240-216, sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, all right.
And they're
Everybody
reducing,
knows what we're talking.
they're reducing from 2 structures to 1.
Yep,
Yes,
that's a very important one.
and they're maintaining, what, 3 bedrooms rather than the
Yes,
4?
maintaining 3 bedrooms. And they've indicated they would accept a limitation of 3 bedrooms.
I have.
Yeah.
Yes, they do, so.
So, I don't know, are there any other findings?
Something with regard to the basement space, there was,
Well, as I said, they're willing to accept a limitation of 3 bedrooms.
all right.
So they
No,
can have a
We want to
TV.
be
I
more
don't- I
explicit
don't-
about that basement space.
No,
No.
because I think they, you know, as long as they're not putting a bedroom down there, if they want to have pool table or whatever, why not?
I think they have adequate parking from what was explained.
Well, there's a 2-car garage, right? Plus,
Yeah.
there's quite a bit of, there's a, you know, gravel driveway there. So sympathetic though I am to, you know, trying to maintain community character, I think this project fits. So then, I guess in terms of conditions, we would say, as per plan,
Bedroom
no more than
restriction.
3 bedrooms.
But a condition not to impede the right-of-way.
Can we
Well,
say that?
I don't,
Well,
don't know.
litigation is beyond our purview, but in terms of,
How about the intent was not to impede the right-of-way? I think that's, they might have the right to, I don't know, maybe they don't, but they don't
well,
intend
that's the
to.
thing. TJ, I don't know what rights, the implication of Attorney Oppenheim is that they have some rights. I don't think we can take those away.
And we don't have anything defining the right-of-way anyway,
We do
so
not.
we don't even.
Well,
have
there's
to-
something on the plan that shows the road.
Yeah.
But,
It's their plan.
I think, moving on, a finding is that they have a Concom
oh,
permit with
that is
conditions.
another,
And that will, I mean, that will be a finding and will be a condition to comply with that.
and substantial re-landscaping has been proposed.
all right. Anything else?
Per plans. What about the building height, because it's close to the,
Yeah, so if you want to do the as-built there,
maybe the as-built on the building height, because it's close to 35 feet.
mhm.
Any other conditions?
I can't think of any. I
Nope.
think,
All right. If there's nothing else, motion to approve was made by Ken and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
could we have a 5-minute break?
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Oh, okay, sorry.
Gary and Mary Ellis or their representatives currently in the room? No? All right.
Oh, I see.
We will be taking a 5-minute break just to let everyone clear out, and there's some people in the hallway, let them filter in.
Wait a minute.
So we'll be taking a break. our break, and welcome back, everyone. I see the room is filled in quite a bit. I do note that there are some people in the hallway, and I believe they are here for this hearing. Come on in. I ask for anyone in here, please make some room, maybe against that back wall. Can be one big happy Falmouth family. Is there anyone still in the hallway waiting to come in? Everyone's here? All right, great. So now that's done. We do have another open hearing today. It's application 115-18, Woods Hole Partners. Just want to make it clear for everyone here, this is the first hearing on this project that we'll have. It's anticipated to go at least another hearing. The board today received a number of correspondences from members of the public and I believe from the applicant's representation as well. So just on that basis alone, we do review comments provided to the file, both from the public and from the applicant. We do take those things seriously. There's no way any of us, we're all volunteers, many of us work full-time. We haven't had an opportunity to review all of that yet, and there are a number of people here tonight. We do hope to be having public comment, and in the event that your schedule doesn't line up with the next hearing date we choose, I suggest please either write to the board or come into the office itself, review the plans, and provide any comment for us there. We do review the files. As I said, we do review all public comment. When the time comes, I just want to remind everyone to please be respectful. Wait for me to call upon you, recognize you, to come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Indicate if you're in favor or against the project, or you might simply just have a general question regarding the project, and we hope to get that answered for you. Please don't make any derogatory or personal comments regarding anyone or the project, and just direct any questions you have through the board. And we'll hope to get everything answered for you, either tonight or on another date. So with that having been said, Ed, as the clerk, will read a few things into the record and we can get started.
Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11, Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Woods Hole Partners LLC of Falmouth, Mass. has applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-240G 1B of the Code of Falmouth to construct 43 residential units throughout 7 buildings and restore the dome structure for the use of an art studio space on subject property known as 533 Woods Hole Road. Engineering has several pages. Six pages of detail. Health Department, proposed project proposes advanced treatment which will need Board of Health approval, less than 19,000 gallons per day. Got a permit from the Mass DEP. Fire Department, adequate access around the property. Planning meeting scheduled for Tuesday, the 22nd of January. The applicant's aware that he needs to file with HC, but has yet to do so. And there's
Historic Commission was that?
all kinds of letters here.
And
For and
It was
against.
a breakdown.
I think she broke down the number.
was there a,
That was
Yeah,
before-
there
there
it
it
is.
is.
Is that before today, or
That was,
does that include today, or? Does this include today?
Letters in favor and,
Oh. 65 letters in support, 26 letters in opposition, and 16 with just comments and concerns.
and before we start, hate to be a stickler for this, but it is a fire hazard if people are blocking the doorway. Just inviting you to come on in. Maybe we can make some more room for you in here. How are we looking, okay?
I still know.
Come on in.
Still in front of the door?
Hmm?
Still in front of the door, they'll have to come in.
You might be able to bring some chairs in from the hallway, put them down front here, if they're already still there.
everyone can sit cross-legged in kindergarten.
I'll take the comfy chair while I present.
Sorry, Attorney,
I said I'll take the comfy chair while I present.
all right. Is that your team behind you too? Maybe they can make some room, or are they members of
Some-
the public?
I don't really know.
You don't know members of your team?
I know members of my
Okay.
team.
Someone's getting a front row seat.
It's gonna work. All right,
Let's go.
all right. Attorney Clower?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ament Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicant, Woods Hole Partners LLC, the owners of 533 Woods Hole Road. Before I begin, Mr. Chair, I would like to request an extended time for presentation this evening. It is a rather complicated application with a lot of history behind it that I'd like to present, and I don't believe I can do so in the allotted time. So I would like to request an allowance of 30 minutes. I don't believe I'll need 30 minutes by any stretch of the imagination, but I'd like to have the latitude.
All right, and just for the benefit of everyone here, we normally allot 15 minutes for an applicant to provide information regarding the project, and then it's up to the board to decide whether we want to extend that time or not. So, given the complexities of this application and everything that Attorney Clower stated, how does the board feel about extending time?
Okay.
Just keep it to 30 minutes so the people that want to speak have an adequate, at least tonight, maybe they'll still have to come back when we extend it.
We'd like to make a vote to that effect.
I make a motion to allow the applicant to go up to, not to exceed 30 minutes in presentation.
Second.
Okay, that was made by Jerry and second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank
Attorney
you very
Clower,
much.
please proceed.
As mentioned, I represent Woods Hole Partners LLC, the applicants in this matter. The principals of Woods Hole Partners are Mark Bogosian and Jonathan Janikes, both of whom are here with us this evening. Yep.
Go to the mic.
Can't close the door.
Just so everyone knows, we can't close the door. It's a violation of the open meeting law if we were. Okay, sir, if you could allow me to, these microphones do amplify a little bit. We could make an adjustment.
Okay. I'll do my best to project a little bit more, reach
Thank
back
you.
to my musical theater days. The principals of Woods Hole Partners LLC are Mark Bogosian and Jonathan Janikes, both of whom are here with us this evening. I'm joined also by Bob Ament from my office, as well as Matt Costa and Raul Lazardi Rivera from Cape and Islands Engineering, and Doug Kelleher of Epsilon Associates. This property, 533 Woods Hole Road, is 5.41 acres, located approximately a quarter mile outside of Woods Hole Village. It contains the remnants of the former Nautilus Motor Inn, which was a 53-room motel, as well as a geodesic dome located in the southwestern corner of the property. That dome was created and constructed in 1954 by renowned architect Buckminster Fuller. it is zoned business redevelopment. The property is in fairly bad condition these days. The applicant is proposing to redevelop the site, the existing decrepit site, with 43 condominium units, 39 of which will be market rate and restricted to 55 plus, 4 of which will be restricted as affordable rentals. This is not a 40B project, though it includes affordable housing. It is not a requirement of the bylaw, and these affordable housing units will be available for the state's subsidized housing inventory. The project contains a mixture of 2 and 3 bedroom units located in 7 buildings, which will include 3 duplexes for the market rate units, 2 duplexes for the affordable housing, 1 multifamily building with 13 units, 1 multifamily building with 20 units. The applicant's also proposing to preserve and restore the Dome, which is previously a 170-seat restaurant. This space would be used to create new artist studios, which is a low-impact use compatible with the proposed residences. This would also entail an addition on the northeast side of the building, which would accommodate the elevator, the bathrooms, the storage, and the exhibition space. This would replace the unsightly and dilapidated appendages to the building, which was previously a kitchen and a laundry. The exterior of the Dome would have publicly accessible gardens and walkways, as well as space for outdoor installations of art, and the ability, providing the public with the ability to walk the circumference of the Dome. Multifamily housing does require a special permit from the zoning board. We also will require site plan review from the planning board, as well as a modification of the 2009 Certificate of Appropriateness from the Historical District Commission. The special permit is 240-240G1B, which allows multifamily use of up to 8 units per acre. 6 units per acre is allowed as a by right use on this property, with no special permit required. To understand the application, I think it's important to know the history of the site. The motel was run from the time the original 12 rooms were built in 1954 until approximately 2004. Units were added to the motel in 6 phases between 1956 and 1980. When the motel closed, it fell into complete ruin. A former owner removed the pipes and the fixtures, and the motel buildings are simply not salvageable. The Dome is an important historic structure. It's in tough shape now, but it can be restored and preserved. The annexes to the Dome, which is the entrance that was built in 1975, and the kitchen wing, are less important, with less historical significance, and are in worse condition. They detract from the Dome and, in fact, are in many ways weakening the Dome structure, and those will be removed. The applicant has had reports. He's commissioned reports, structural and historical analyses of the property to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken during the renovation of that building. We've had a report from Structures North Consulting Engineers, and they're a leading specialist in rehabilitation and restoration. They're highly respected in the preservation community, and we submitted their report as well as their resume. In terms of the historical report, Doug Kelleher of Epsilon and Associates has provided that they are leading preservation consultants with extensive experience in historical preservation, planning, and architectural design review. Previously, Mr. Kelleher was a preservation planner with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. We've also submitted his report and resume. The applicants engaged some of the best preservation talent available, and will continue to do so throughout this process. In terms of the developmental history of the site, in 2006, the previous owners and developer Chris Wise sought permitting for 43 units of market rate age-restricted residences, very similar to what we're proposing tonight. The main difference in that situation was that the prior development was all in one single large building. And we actually have the plans that they proposed available tonight. And you'll see the layout here of one very large building on the site. That property was then zoned residential C. Mr. Wise was working with the Community Association, and after alternative developments were considered, the Community Association agreed to support the rezoning of the property at town meeting. That was the 2007 fall town meeting. And in return, Chris Wise agreed to a covenant on the site, which specifically stated the use of the property for 43 units under special permit 240-240G1B. Town meeting voted to rezone this property to business redevelopment, which allows up to 8 units per acre. That covenant is recorded at the Registry of Deeds. From 2007 to 2009, Wise obtained all of the necessary permits. Again, 43 units in one large building. That included approvals from the Cape Cod Commission, a special permit from this board, site plan review from the Planning Board, and a certificate of appropriateness from the Historical District Commission. The building was never built, quite obviously, largely due to the Great Recession, which began in 2007 and didn't correct itself for a number of years. I graduated law school then. Not a great time to graduate law school. The Cape Cod Commission decision is still in effect, has already been modified. The certificate of appropriateness is likewise still in effect and will be modified. Otherwise, the prior permits have expired. Woods Hole Partners purchased this property in late 2016. Since that time, they've been engaged in the design, negotiations, and permitting of the site. Even prior to ownership, they began discussions with the Woods Hole Community Association. It was made clear to the applicant that similar detached townhouses were not consistent with the Community Association's view of the character of Woods Hole. Over the next year and more, Woods Hole Partners negotiated with the Community Association. There were scores of designs and plans discussed. After much compromise, the Community Association accepted the design that is presented tonight. In doing so, there was mention of Woods Hole's history of larger scale buildings set in a campus setting. On January 17, 2018, 1 year ago tonight actually, the site plan layout that's been presented to you was presented to the Community Association. They voted and agreed to amend the covenant, including the plan as an exhibit to that covenant. It was signed about a month later in February, 14 months after the discussions originally began. A copy of both the 2007 covenant and the signed amendment have been submitted to the board. The amended covenant states that the Community Association is agreeable to 43 units and 7 buildings, provided there's 4 affordable rentals. It also requires walking trails and outdoor recreation spaces be open to the public, and provides that the 4 units are restricted as affordable. The applicant may seek alternate developments allowed in residential district. The dome shall be preserved and renovated if feasible, and after review by our specialists, it was determined that the dome can in fact be preserved, and the applicant shall do so. The covenant also requires that the applicant explore the proposed development of an art center with the Dome at Woods Hole, Inc. They are a group comprised of individuals who have sought to create an art center at the site. Members of the group have been trying to create an art center at the site since 2006. Their efforts and comments that have been presented will be discussed shortly. This information timeline is relevant to our application. The design and the number of units are the result of a negotiation with the Community Association. The proposal that was submitted reflects community input involvement and also the extent to which the applicant has listened to and incorporated that input into his plans. The present application is for a special permit allowing for multifamily use of up to 8 units per acre. As I mentioned before, 5.4 acres in the business redevelopment would allow 32 units by right with no affordable housing required by the bylaw. We are instead seeking 43 units, an increase of only 9, of which 4 of them are going to be affordable. The market rate units will be restricted to 55 plus in accordance with HUD guidelines. The duplexes will be 2 stories tall. The multifamily buildings will be 2.5 stories tall. This is the same number of units previously approved and envisioned in the rezoning of the property. There are a number of significant differences. There's fewer market rate units on site. The 4 affordable units are located on site and will be retained as affordably restricted rentals. The units are located in 7 buildings as opposed to 1 large monolithic structure. The previous affordable housing was going to be located off-site. However, the applicant, in discussions with the Community Association, determined that the proposal would be better and more beneficial to the community if the affordable housing was located on-site within walking distance to Woods Hole Village. The dome is preserved as a standalone structure detached from the condominiums. Previously, it was it was built into the condominium itself. It was built into you can see on the WISE plans, the building itself connected to the dome. As I mentioned, this is not a 40B project, and it's therefore not subject to 40B regulations. The applicant intends to retain the units as affordable rentals, and they will be what are considered local action units and subject to these subsidized housing inventory requirements. The applicant will be a long-term participant in this project and in the condominium association, and will be able to act as a steward of the vision that's presented this evening. The affordable housing units are, in fact, condominium units. The tenants will have, though not owners, will have access to all condominium amenities. There are a number of benefits to this. There's new, well-located, affordable units, and quite needed, in fact. The bylaw does not require affordable housing. By right application would not include affordable housing, except as required by the covenant otherwise. At the request of the community association, they were located on site, and that location was shown on the plan attached to and made part of the amended covenant. It's important to note the location of the affordable units, which are on the western end of the site. And that's because the condominium units, the market rate condominium units, are in fact age restricted, 55 plus. The affordable housing is not. And as such, we wouldn't want to create a situation where we had people expecting to have an age restricted community not have that benefit, or vice versa. Business redevelopment allows for lot coverage by structured paving and parking of up to 60%. The covenant, however, limits the coverage by structures and paving to 40%. This results in increased green space, substantially more than is otherwise required. The landscaping plan is harmonious with the surrounding area, and it's a vast improvement over the existing dilapidated condition of the site. The setbacks are likewise greater than are typically required. The bylaw requires front yard setback of 20 feet and side and rear yard setbacks of 10 feet. Per the covenant, the applicant has setback from this portion of Woods Hole Road 55 feet and more than 20 feet from this portion, this sideline here. The rear yard setback from the front lane residences is at least 70 feet as opposed to the 10 that is required. In terms of wastewater, the applicant is proposing a new fast septic system. These are designed for and used in nitrogen-sensitive areas. The proposed design flow is less than 10,000 gallons per day, which is significantly less than the former motel and restaurant, which was almost 12,000 gallons. In fact, this development generates approximately half the nitrogen loading of the prior development on the site. In terms of traffic, there was a traffic report completed in 2008, which has been submitted, as well as an update from that same consultant. Similarly, there was a recent Cape Cod Commission traffic counting report over the last decade, which shows that there has been no increase in the number of cars on Woods Hole Road. Traffic studies indicate that there's no material impact to this application. And in fact, it generates 15% of the peak trips of the prior use of the site. It likewise shows that there's safe stopping distances and sight lines, and that the traffic is to be divided between two curb cuts, which are approximately 570 feet apart. The applicant, again, will preserve and restore the dome, which will be a standalone structure. They'll remove the 1975 entry in the kitchen wing, and they'll remove the decrepit motel buildings. The removal of the annexes to the dome were approved, again, by the Cape Cod Commission, by the Zoning Board of Appeals, by the Historic District Commission, and the Massachusetts Historical Commission. The dome will also have publicly accessible gardens and walkways around the structure. It's necessary, though it's unfortunate, to have to respond to some of the opposition that has been submitted. The covenant did in fact require that the applicant explore the development of an art center with the dome at Woods Hole, Inc. That group has sought, in their own words, to wrest control of the property from the applicant in order to create a major art center that they desire and have sought since 2006. Since prior to the purchase, Mr. Bogosian has been involved with them in discussions. They've discussed the possibility of a mutually beneficial arrangement, and in October of 2017, the applicant offered a 99-year lease for the dome at Woods Hole, Inc., in which they'd receive the dome and the surrounding half-acre of land at no cost. We received no response for 8 months despite repeated inquiries. When Dome at Woods Hole did respond, they demanded a gift of 1.5 acres of land. They also wanted exclusive control over the renovation and the use of the dome, and the right to control and approve the remainder of the property, development over the remainder of the property. They also sought to have the applicant pay for infrastructure, the installation and maintenance of a wastewater treatment facility, and parking space for 85 cars in order to accommodate events of up to 250 people. We estimated the cost at about $700,000, $680,000 to be exact was the number we came to. Despite those demands, and despite an estimated project cost, in their own words, of about $10 million, they refused to provide a time frame for fundraising. They required the right to back out of the lease at any time, and they provided no right for the owner to terminate, even if they failed to reach any benchmarks or stalled in their renovations. They provided no confidence or assurances to the applicant of their ability to raise funds, nor assurances of preservation within the reasonable time frame. Since Doma Woods Hole has withdrawn from negotiation, they've sought to marshal opposition to the development for their own ends. They've made public comments that are disparaging, defamatory, and made with an ulterior motive of seeking control of land that they don't own. The organization president is on record as saying that they continue efforts to wrest control of the property and that the significance of the dome outweighs the property rights of the owner. They're not opposed to the development of the site. They're opposed to the development of the site that's not one that they envision. Provided they had an art center with 10,000 square feet of structure in order to support their endeavors, they didn't oppose the 43 units of housing. They weren't concerned with density, which would have been much greater with the art center and the housing on site. They weren't concerned with traffic, which the art center would have exacerbated greatly. Their objections are disingenuous, and they should be considered in light of their interest in obtaining control of the site. The opposition correspondence that's been submitted seems to have been largely generated due to the campaign of Doma Woods Hole. There's been clear misinformation and misunderstanding provided, and those misstatements should be addressed. A number of letters made reference to the increased density is not appropriate or sustainable for Woods Hole. Woods Hole already has a dense development scheme, and that density informs much of the character of the village. Millfield Street, for instance, has a density of 7 units per acre. Gardner Road along Mill Pond has a density of 11 units per acre. Woods Hole is not a pastoral rural setting. It's a vibrant, walkable village with institutions, shops, and restaurants. The previous site had 53 motel units, an apartment, and a 170-seat restaurant. Town meeting changed the zoning in order to allow the proposed density. That density's twice been agreed to by the Community Association, and the previous development was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals and other authorities. It's been said that the applicant doesn't understand the significance of the dome, and that it's safe to assume that they'll fail to comply with the Secretary of Interior standards as to renovation. Another letter indicates that the plans don't indicate an understanding of the importance of the dome. Again, Woods Hole Partners has engaged leading firms in historical preservation. They're utilizing these services to take care in their restoration and preservation of the property, and have stated intent to provide access both to the interior and the exterior of the dome. In an editorial in the Falmouth Enterprise, the organization's president referred to traffic and increased sewer load. Again, our traffic study indicates that there's negligible impact of this development. It's much less than the former use of the site, less than many other potential uses that could be by right, and certainly less than a major art center hosting 250 people would accommodate. The project's not on the sewer, and the applicants proposed an advanced technology wastewater system. Other letters refer to them exceeding zoning regulation on the property, which is simply incorrect. This isn't a variance, it's a special permit use. It's an allowed special permit use. It's the very use the property was rezoned for, as supported by the Community Association and consistent with the 2007 covenant and 2018 modification to that covenant. One of the letters states that our concern with the proposed project is purely out of concern for the dome. That's clearly false. The concern is the project is not the one that Doma Woods Hole wants. It's not borne out just by their own words and actions. It's confirmed in writing by them a number of times. The vice chair of the board states, Woods Hole Partners needs to think and redesign their development plans and give Doma Woods Hole Inc. the ability to carry out the steps needed to restore the dome and make it available for community and public use. Again, it's obvious they're not proposed to multifamily development, provided that they can have their own art center. It's only when that goal is not met that these concerns develop. They want the owner to donate a significant amount of property and have demonstrated no ability whatsoever to succeed in this. The Zoning Board of Appeals cannot and should not consider the possibility of another application for a different use by a group that does not own or have any control over the site. The criticisms of this project should be viewed through the lens of their motivation. While this information is important, it's more important to understand the legal parameters and the limited relief that's actually sought by this applicant, the benefits this project carries, and why the special permit should be granted. 240G1B allows for a special permit for multifamily use of up to 8 units per acre, provided that the public good is served, that the business zoned area is not adversely affected, and the uses permitted in the zone would not be noxious to a multifamily use. The board's also to consider the standards of 240-216, in which the primary question is whether the proposed use has adverse effects overbalancing its beneficial effects on either the neighborhood or the town in view of the particular characteristics of the site. This project clearly meets the standards of both 240G1B and 240-216. Under 240G1B, the public good is served with the addition of new housing stock with senior housing and affordable rentals. It's the redevelopment of a property that's virtually in ruins, and it'll result in a restoration and preservation of the dome. The business zoned area is not adversely affected by this proposal. There's no abutting business zone properties. The 2 abutting properties on either side are motels, and they'd benefit greatly from the redevelopment of this property. Owners of both of those motels have submitted letters in support. Other uses permitted in the zone are not noxious to the proposal. The only use allowed in the business redevelopment by the zoning and the covenant is residential, which obviously is not going to be noxious to the proposal. Under 240-216, it cannot be disputed that the beneficial effects of this project outweigh any adverse effects. The property has been in decline for nearly 15 years. It's been in a state of ruin since prior to the applicant's purchase. The benefits are even clearer when they're weighed against the considerations of 240-216. The site, at 5.4 acres, is more than an adequate size, and that's borne out by the fact that we're only utilizing 40% of lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking, and are utilizing extra setbacks. The property's zone business redevelopment, which is appropriate and suitable for the proposed housing, especially in light of the proximity to Woods Hole Village. There's negligible impact on traffic flow and safety. The visual character will be the replacement of an eyesore, greatly improving the neighborhood visual character, as well as improving the appearance of the dome and public access to the site. All of the wastewater and drainage will be controlled on site and will have the benefit of an advanced technology system installed. Utilities are adequate for what were proposed. There's no adverse impacts on public services. There's an increase of 4 units for affordable housing, all of which is includable in the state-subsidized housing inventory. It meets all the parking requirements, and in fact, half of the parking is underneath buildings or within garages. It includes an appropriate and detailed landscape plan. The affordable rental units will be in compliance with the conditions set forth in 240-216J. The proposed development will not have any adverse effects, which overbalances beneficial effects for either the neighborhood or the town, especially in view of the particular characteristics of the site. We believe this is a good plan. We think it's a great plan, but it cannot and does not have to be the perfect plan, and it can't be perfect in every way to everyone. Dozens and dozens of thoughtful letters have been submitted in support, show that many agree that this is in fact a good plan, that benefits far exceed the detriment, and the project should be approved. The board must ask and must answer one question: are there detriments that outweigh the benefits? The building on the site are ruins, they're eyesores, nuisances. The site's in terrible condition and will be replaced with appropriate, attractive senior and affordable housing. The site will be vastly improved. The applicant will preserve the dome, properly restoring it and providing access. None of this can be a detriment, despite what those with a different plan might say. The applicant has designed and created a beautiful development that will serve as a benefit not only to Woods Hole, but to the town of Falmouth. The board cannot reasonably find that the benefits will not outweigh any detriments. And with that finding, the requested special permit must be granted. I, along with the other members of our team, would be happy to answer any questions you might have at this time. And we appreciate your giving us some extra time.
Thank you, Attorney Clower. And just for the record, that was 25 minutes.
Mr. Chairman?
23 when I timed it yesterday, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
In light that if the board takes up another 15 to 20 minutes of question, we may not allow the people that want to speak for or against the project to speak tonight, that maybe if we could withhold our comments until the next meeting.
Sure. So
I mean, that's just my own personal feeling.
I understand what you're saying. So there's no way we're going to come to conclude this matter tonight. It's my understanding that I believe they do have to go through at least Planning Board and perhaps some other boards. Historic Commission as well. So tonight was more of an introductory sort of meeting, so we would get an idea of this project. Does the board have, well, I should just ask the board before we make any decisions. do we have any basic comments about this project first? Given the amount of people here, I'd certainly like to have their concerns addressed.
You know, I just, one question on the plan itself, when I was going through them, there was a driveway easement that, when I did the site visit, and I didn't see it on any of the plans. Is it possible to put that on the plan?
Sure, the driveway easement will be relocated. There's pretty substantial case law saying that a surveying estate can relocate an easement on site, providing they're not impacting the ability of use on it.
Yeah, so if you could just depict it somewhere in the plan, just so we know where it's gonna be, the
Sure.
relocation. And I didn't get chance to go over the traffic report yet, but does that give any kind of trip generation from this site, or?
It does.
Okay.
So, just one note, the easement essentially will follow the entry of the property. I don't know if I can see the mouse here. Yeah, okay. So the easement, as it lays right now, basically comes up this road, and right now would come through this building over to this area here and down into this property back here. Instead, it will just follow this road here. But we can, happy to put that on the plan.
Yeah, just so I see it on the plan.
I'm going to just interject. I'm Bob Ament, and working with Kevin on this, that presently the location of the easement as shown on a plan doesn't work. It goes into huge boulders. So the easement already, the use of it is not where the easement is plotted on plans, and that's shown on the plans that have been submitted. We can provide more information about that, and the case law that allows the owner of the property to relocate a unit as long as the purposes of it continue to be met.
Yeah, I just didn't see it on the plan submitted. I might have missed it, but I just want to make sure it's on there.
Any other questions?
I just had and you might not be able to answer this, but maybe
can
you
try.
could produce a document. So I well remember approval.
You were
of
the only person
WISE
still on the board.
Of the WISE project. And I just am interested in a comparison, building height and footprints.
I can actually give you
Between
that
the two.
information right now.
Okay?
Building heights are essentially the same. Most of our building heights are somewhere between 27 and 35 feet. The WISE project was 35 feet. The lot coverage by structures in that case, the WISE project was about 18% lot coverage. We are at 19% lot coverage. So it's a slightly larger footprint that we have overall. However, the gross floor area of the WISE project was 160,000 square feet. We are at 124,000 square feet for total gross floor area.
120,
124.
24, okay.
And they were 160,054.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna violate my own request. Could you
We're hitting
submit
on
what
brief
you
things here.
read tonight?
I'd be happy to.
Because I don't think, it's far more extensive than I think that was in the file. It'll be easier.
I got that information about an hour and a half ago, so.
You're not that good.
Sometimes I surprise even myself.
Thank you.
Blind acorns, blind pigs and acorns.
Any other questions from the board? Attorney Cloward, just for the board's benefit and I guess the public's benefit as well, can you give us a roadmap of the approvals that you're seeking, not only from this board, but perhaps other?
So
boards in
we've
town?
received a modification to the Cape Cod Commission decision already. And we're presenting to you this evening, of course, and we're presenting to Planning Board shortly. We're in the process of working with, presenting to Planning Board on Tuesday. We're in the process of working with the Massachusetts Historical Commission right now. There was a requirement for preservation restriction in the dome, so we're trying to work through that. And once that's completed, we'll be submitting our application to the Falmouth Historical Commission for a modification of their certificate of appropriateness.
Anything else from the board?
What's the estimated time frame for that historical commission? I mean, you
In a
talking
perfect
another
world?
year?
No, we'd like to have, I think it's possible for us to have permits in hand by mid-late spring.
And Attorney Clower, you mentioned for lack of a better term, the sewer disposal unit. Can you elaborate on that?
I'll get yelled at by the engineer if I try to elaborate on that.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape Analysis Engineering. So the project is proposing to use several on-site D-night septic system. We're proposing the fast unit systems. There's going to be 2 smaller systems to take what we call building B, C, and D. All 3 of those buildings will have D-night. There'll be another smaller D-night system for building G and F, which are the affordable rental units. And then there's going to be a much larger system to take care of the 2 big buildings.
C-121.
So from here, we can see one of the systems in front of these 2 buildings, one system in front of this 1 building, one system for these 2 buildings, and then the large system for the big buildings.
Thank you.
Can I
Ken, I'm
follow
sure
up?
this is your wheelhouse.
Well, actually, it's Jerry's, but just curious as to, and Jerry asked this question too, the target
I'm gonna ask
effluent,
it next week.
effluent concentration and whether you're gonna, what the monitoring plan is.
We'll have to work that with Board of Health because it's a D-night system. We'll have to go through the Board of Health process application, and we'll refine those details later on.
Anything else? No? Jerry, anything?
Not at this time.
All right. Any other questions from the board?
No.
All right, so at this time, we'll turn it over to public comment. Please wait to be recognized by me. Go up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. State if you're opposed or in favor of the project. You can state whatever question you have, or just a simple comment you might have about the project. It might be appropriate, Attorney Clower, if you just keep a running tab of the questions, and we'll see if we can get them answered tonight or at a later date. Just please direct any questions, comments, concerns toward the project, toward the board. Please refrain from using any derogatory or personal statements. So we'll start with those, I'll say, those in support of the project. Would
Mr.
anyone like to
Are we going to say we're gonna adjourn at 10, 10:30, just to get people a feel?
So we normally go to 9:30, and then by vote of the board, it can be extended.
Okay, so
So why don't we see where we stand?
We're good on time for now.
Okay.
We'll just see where we stand soon. So, would anyone like to speak in favor of the project?
Other than the
Sorry.
applicant.
yeah.
Other than the applicant or the applicant's representatives? Sir?
My name is Arnie Grepstad, 18 Chase Road, Falmouth, Mass. I would like to present the following to the members of the board. I write this letter in support of the applicants made by Woods Hole Partners LLC for 533 Woods Hole Road. I am the general manager of the Sands of Time and have been for the last 9 years. The Sands of Time is the motel directly next door to the property here in question, located on the closer side to Woods Hole. Prior to that, I was the owner of the Dome Restaurant from 1987 through 1997 and had worked for the Peterson family for 15 years predating that. I am intimately familiar with the property and with the surrounding Woods Hole community as I have occupied space in Woods Hole since 1973. Over the last 2 years, I have been informed of the ongoing plans and proposals for the property by Mark Bogosian, as he has sought input on design and layout from myself and other nearby property owners. The proposed development would be a significant improvement over the previously approved project, over alternatives that have been discussed for the site, and certainly for the existing conditions. The use of the property as residences is in line with its past use and a needed addition to Woods Hole and the town of Falmouth. This will make for a great neighbor to the nearby properties. I am pleased to hear that the dome will be preserved and its potential use for art space is appropriate and will have little impact on the community. Conversely, the discussion of the site as major art center would have significant adverse impacts, adding significant traffic and bringing noise issues to the area. The proposal has a number of beneficial aspects for the community and is well-suited for the area. I encourage the board to approve this proposal. Sincerely, Arnie Grepstad.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And if you printed out your comments, if you'd like to submit them, please feel free.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like? Oh, sure. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of the project? Sir?
I timed out my remarks, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Chairman Hurry. I hope to be done in less than 3 minutes. For the record, my name is Michael Conley, and I'm live at 87 Gunning Point. And I'm reminded of an old quote that say nothing and be thought a fool, speak and remove all doubt. But I must speak. And the reason why I say that is, as part of my introduction, I just wish to point out that in an earlier life, I was the Massachusetts Secretary of State. And in that capacity, I was the chairman of the Massachusetts Historical Commission for 16 years. And that period of time was from 1979 through 1995. My predecessor has actually outstayed my 16 years. He's been there for 25 years. As chairman of the Massachusetts Historical Commission, I oversaw and reviewed hundreds of historical projects. And I had done it all across the state. And I must say there are a couple of excellent projects that are on the planning stages right now in Falmouth, and I expect to speak on all of them in one regard or another. But more importantly, I'm a homeowner in Falmouth, taxpayer. And I have been a full-time resident of Falmouth for 18 months now, over 18 months. And I'm thrilled to be here. It's a great relief from living in Boston, having lived in Boston prior to that. That was always the plan. And I want to say I fully support the Dome Nautilus project. And as historic preservations projects go, this is a great one. It really, I've really been struck by it. It took me a while to get to that decision, but I have. And so there are 3 fundamental points. I've followed the project as a member of the Woods Hole Community Association. I've followed the project in the newspapers. I've talked with both sides on the issue, both parties, attended events and other things, and I've walked the property, done the site visit, all of it, just as though I were back in my original capacity as the chairman of the Historical Commission. And the first thing that always popped out to me was the serious disrepair that not only the Dome was in, but the Nautilus Hotel Motel Complex, however you want to characterize it, and the time to restore and preserve the Dome and to build the new 39 units of housing is long overdue, long overdue. And with that, the appendages must be taken down, and the buffer between the dome and the new buildings, just fine. It really meets all the criteria, the rules and regs of the Mass Historical Commission. And while I cannot speak for the commission, because I am no longer the chair, let me just say, if we rolled time back 25 years and things really haven't changed that much, this project would be approved today. Secondly, I just want to say, with respect to the team that the Woods Hole Partners has put together, Doug Kelleher, the historic preservation specialist here, as well as John Watney from Structures North as a structural engineer. There's none better in the state. I was so impressed to hear that they had put this team together. It was really struck me, and I knew that in the historic preservation community, that everyone knows that they'll restore and preserve the dome, again, as the historic gem that it should be, and a valuable resource for the community of Woods Hole. Lastly, third point, and I think I'm still on time, in terms of the proponents and opponents, as I had mentioned earlier, I've met with both sides, and I've had meetings and phone calls with both sides. It was a few weeks ago that I decided that I would publicly support the project. And in that particular context, I actually went back. I was going to call Nicole Goldman to have a final phone call with her, because she's worked so hard on this particular project, to tell her that I had made a decision and I could not support her efforts at Mass Historical to reverse an earlier decision that they made with respect to the project. And I have a note here that I had sent to Nicole, and I'm going to paraphrase it, and because we never were able to connect with respect to the phone call, and it goes as follows. Nicole, my phone call to you last week was prompted by my dismay at both the substance and the tone of statements sent from the Dome Group, as well as in articles in the local press regarding the Dome and Nautilus projects. After considerable thought, I have decided I am not going to be calling you back, but it is clear to me that I cannot support your efforts or your tactics to gain site control of the Dome, nor can I support your opposition to the present plans for the development of the site for housing, restoration and preservation of the Dome as well. Hopefully, we will be able to work together on a different project in the future. I think it's, in summary, best said, it'd be a sad day for Woods Hole. I love that village. It's mainly why I chose to live a couple of miles up the road. Great place for dinner, and it's just a fabulous, fabulous resource for the town. It's sorry that they have to take so much pounding, whether it's with the respect of the Steamship Authority or the new plan that was implemented by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. I do not want to extend, I don't want to criticize anybody else. It's just too much. And I just trust you'll act favorably and in a timely fashion to approve this great project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak in favor of the project, ma'am?
I'm going to be very brief. I speak for the Veder Realty Trust. My name is Becky Connors, and we are direct abutters on two sides. We own the property at 540 Woods Hole Road and 549 Woods Hole Road. The property, former Nautilus property, has fallen into great disrepair and is a large detriment to our business and the village as a whole. And we look forward to the tasteful development of this property. I think that Mark has done a very good job working with architects. It's beautifully designed, and we support the project.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of the project? Okay, last chance. Anyone speaking in favor of the project here tonight? Okay. Would anyone like to speak in opposition of the project? Sir?
I'm on the tail end of the
Oh, sure, come on up.
Good evening. My name's Dave Bruce. My name is David Bruce. So I was on the fence, pretty much, coming in, and a little behind in all the information.
Sorry, sir, what's your address?
Excuse me?
Your address?
My address is 14 School Street,
Thank you.
Woods Hole. So, on the fence a little bit. And a lot of it has to do with the recent pounding that was just mentioned, the steamship, the Hui, all the activity down there. The two things that seem to be important to me and to villagers is the green space, that and good taste. And so I want to say it was a great presentation, and information is very logical. I love that this property is going to get restored in a way, that the dome is going to be preserved as an art center or redirected as an art center. I guess along the way, I would wish to suggest some changes in that location because of having just lost the green space in Woods Hole. These two properties seem to be in the woods. I may not be correct. And these are abandoned tennis courts. It seems like a logical place to put housing without sacrificing trees. But I guess my big point here is that the zoning is very objective. We want to be able to apply the subjective aspects, the aspects from a village that has, the people that live there have to cope with events day to day, and I suppose we just want to have the project come out as tastefully as possible. And anyway, there it is. Thank you.
Okay,
Could I comment as an abutter from the neither for nor against category, direct abutter?
of course you can.
Can I do it now?
You can.
Michael Goldring, 44 Fern Lane. As you know, 44 Fern Lane is the road behind the whole project. I'm the closest Fern Lane abutter to the Dome and to the existing parking lot behind the motel. And I'm the only Fern Lane abutter who is a year-round resident. I have lived with uncertainty around the site's development for 12 years, with worries about its effect on property values, saleability, and quality of life, and with a noisy parking lot. I hope to live to see the matter settled and development done with. Currently, I have a view of winter sunsets over the parking lot. When buildings are built there, I will no longer have that view. In summer, I have a natural screen that blocks out the entire site. I expect that screen to be replaced by an equally effective and attractively landscaped screen. Here's a photo of the sunset that I won't have anymore.
Stamp that in.
As the only year-round resident on Fern Lane, the disruption and noise of the construction will be on me. Over the past 2 years, I've met with Mr. Bogosian several times to discuss the effects of the project and its construction period on my house and property. I would like to have conditions placed on any permits which may be issued based upon the things he told me would be done to mitigate the impact of the construction. These are detailed in the letter that I have submitted, so I won't read them now. The current plans include no parking lot on my side of the project. The existing parking lot has been operated illegally for years, with trucks operating noisily at all hours. I would be opposed to any plan for the Dome that includes a parking lot. Yesterday, a letter was submitted by Fern Lane abutter David Spector, which you may have seen already or not, and it's on behalf of the Fern Lane residents as a group, summarizing the concerns of our neighborhood. and I concur with the points in the letter. Fern Lane is the woods of Woods Hole. It's an old forest, so cutting down the trees there is going to remove the woods of Woods Hole, or in a great portion of it. So that's why I'm mentioning that I'm hoping that landscaping will somehow make up for that in some way, and that it will be very mature plants that will be added. And some of that is in my letter as well. So I will bear the brunt of the construction, so I'm hoping to have every possible consideration to make it possible to live through and to be over with.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other people wishing to speak in favor of the project tonight? Sir?
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Doug Keller. I'm the aforementioned Doug Keller of Epsilon Associates. I've been working with Mark and his team for just about a year now. We submitted a letter earlier today, which most of you probably haven't got a chance to review, but it basically summarizes our work to date with the team. We've enlisted the firm of Structures North, which has been mentioned, a premier structural engineering consulting firm that has, their first effort was to outline stabilization efforts to properly stabilize the dome so that it doesn't further deteriorate, particularly with the winter season that we have, or will likely have this weekend.
Chairman, excuse me.
Yes.
Sure.
I would put this down as speaking for the proponent and not for or against.
Sure.
He's
Could you-
professionally engaged.
Can you
and
clarify
that's
your
not-
position? Are you,
We're in full support of the project. We've been, like I said, we've been working with the project team.
what's your connection with the project?
We are consultants to.
Oh, okay,
the
so it might be
project
inappropriate for you to be commenting during public comment. As part of the development team, I'd rather have you speak with,
Speak next week or something.
yes, maybe speak at a next date or.
Certainly happy to
Other
do so.
time.
Happy
Thank
to
you.
do so.
Sure. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of the project? Oh, okay.
Good evening. I'm Donald Estes, lifelong resident of Falmouth, born, raised, second generation of Lamb Fall Restaurant in Woods Hole. Seen this project for many, many years. My friends growing up, my neighbors were the first to have purchased this property years ago. The only reason they didn't go through with what they did is because of the many, many hurdles that they had to go through. I'm in support of this project. I think Mark has done a wonderful job coming up with his architect, plans, his team. As far as traffic goes, 43 units? Doesn't make sense. So anyway, I support this project. Hope you keep it going.
Thank you, Mr. Estes. Last chance, anyone else willing to speak in favor of the project tonight? Okay, seeing none, would anyone? Oh, would you like to speak in favor? Sure.
Thank you.
Just state whether you're opposed or in favor, or?
Sure.
Just
My
a
name is Beth
simply
Colt.
question.
I'm a direct abutter next door at 527 Woods Hole Road. This has been a really complicated project to follow because there's a lot of advocacy for it that everybody cares about. And I really wrestled with this. But I would like to speak in favor of the plans. I believe 43 units are an appropriate use of the site. I think it will improve the site. And I'm pleased to hear that the dome will be preserved. I think that's really important for the community. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Cole.
you.
Thank you. Guess we'll turn it to if anyone would like to speak in opposition of the project. Anyone out there wishing to do so? Sir?
Hi, my name is David Epstein. I'm an abutter 15 Fern Lane. As yet, not a year-round resident, but I have every respect for Michael and what he had to say. I am not speaking directly in opposition, and I'm also not going to go through all my comments. I want to express my concerns about the project as it currently is, and perhaps ask the commission to, the board, to consider a larger historical framework than the one offered by the developers. The Cape Cod Commission had in its modification of the existing permit the language of that this is typical of traditional development in the region, and this just isn't true. There are no 20-unit condos, as far as I know, in Woods Hole, no 13-unit buildings, and although it's nice to sidewall and white cedar, it doesn't mean that you're consistent with community character design. I do think it's a laudable and interesting and well-designed project. I do trouble over the density. If you look above these large leaching fields, that's my house. That's my backyard. This is the literal NIMBY, not in my backyard. I didn't buy the property. I think it's a good development in many respects, but I have concerns about this. Also, in the Cape Cod Commission's unchallenged decision, because they don't have to publicize anything or put out letters to the abutters, was the line that the largest of the proposed buildings is located farther back on the property, further reducing its perceived size. Well, maybe from the front, but I live in the back. I'd like to point that out, and that is just not a selling point for me. I consulted with a couple of engineers who looked at the plans. It was nice of the development team to give us good access to all of the plans. And each of them had the same reaction. Why isn't a project of this magnitude on a municipal sewer line? And the wastewater line itself is right across Woods Hole, downhill all the way. And when I asked Mr. Bogosian about this last summer, he said that they couldn't enter the system, according to the town, except had they run a pipeline all the way to the village center. And I think that the board should look into whether this is a possibility or not. I think it's a much better solution for all involved. As for the septic plans as given, I'm worried about the 24-hour failure capacity. What happens on the 25th hour? And with this number of year-round units, there needs to be careful oversight of the planned septic. And this is, of course, my concern because it's right next to the house there. If there's a failure, I'll probably know about it. Written into the ownership ought to be a contribution towards an escrow fund specifically for the maintenance, repair, and replacement of the septic facilities during and after the useful life of the system. I would also like to see a clear statement that any sudden failure would be addressed immediately and costs borne by the development. Current sewerage plans label the leaching field vent location as to be determined in the field. The site plan shows such venting directly adjacent to my property line. I want it determined ahead of time that any such venting be located as distantly as possible from all dwellings, both on the lot and abutting, namely in the southeast corner of septic system number 4. That would make a lot more sense. Ideally, I would like to see a construction ban during the times when people like to have their windows open. That might help us, Michael. I lost track of where you are. Thank you. To deal with this. Condo developments frequently place these kinds of hiatuses themselves so that people moving in and purchases don't have to deal with the noise of construction during peak usage times. Also, it makes complete sense to me to ask that the largest building should be completed before the rest of the project proceeds, which will at least provide some noise abatement for the Fern Lane neighborhood while the latter parts of the project proceed. I also think that there should be a reasonable time limit that could be meaningfully adhered to in terms of a construction time frame. I'm fond of the dome itself, but I know a lot less about its history, and I'm going to leave that for other people to discuss. In terms of larger history, the Cape has a history of mismanagement, and just observing the law as written will condemn everybody to perpetuating the errors that have led to overcrowding and taxed water supplies in eutrophy lakes and estuaries. We have been content to keep the blinders of bylaws on our eyes for many generations, and the legacy of that narrow view has been a lack of a comprehensive wastewater management system, pollution plumes coming at our wells and waterways, and no clear vision for the future. After the Clean Water Act of 1972, I don't see that the town here, a coastal community, has done anything to move ahead of the strictures of 1972. People mess up. There will be more than water and degradable wastes that go down the drains. We'll see pesticides and petroleum, gasoline, fertilizers, anything that people just simply want to make disappear, paints and turpentine, kitchen grease, bleach. And where will it go? On the surface, it'll go downhill one way or the other.
Mr.
Either-
Epstein, you have exceeded the time. But,
Okay.
if you had,
My last comment, if I may, I'll wrap it up
and
very
you can
quickly.
submit that to the record as well.
Is before the Nautilus was built, my understanding is that the property was sold as one not to be subdivided, and subsequent owners subdivided and subdivided, and this kind of development, in my opinion, while I think nicely rendered, is too dense, and I would like the board to consider asking the developer to come back with something far less dense.
Thank you. Anyone else out there like to speak in opposition of the project? Anyone else willing to speak in opposition? Ma'am?
I'm the guinea pig. But thank you, David. I have some comments to make, and I made copies.
No worries. Thank you. And please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yep, my name is Nicole Goldman. I live at 12 Sydney Street in Woods Hole. I live about 500 yards from the Nautilus property. I've submitted some written statements with a number of questions. I will try not to repeat myself. And commentary with my objections to the issues of density, design, impact on the neighborhood, village and town with regard to historic character of the village, traffic impact, construction timeline, and very importantly, what I will term as an ill-conceived and insensitive plan for the preservation of the dome. Essentially, I believe that these proposed plans are inappropriate and are the wrong design and the wrong concept for this very important parcel in the heart of the historic district of the Woods Hole Village. This plan is higher in density than previously designed. Additionally, includes placement of affordable housing units at the far end of the property, creating a second-class residence status. Its treatment of the dome is weak and incomplete, demonstrating the builder's lack of understanding of the sensitive nature of the rehabilitation of a structure of this stature. There seems to be no compelling reason why to provide a special permit. If it's simply the case where the town is looking to increase revenues of the tax base, I want to know what the cost is then to the town and the residents for grossly overdeveloping the site and overwhelming the town and village. They want more density. Besides the taxes, what is the benefit to the town? What are the downsides? Are these year-round residents? Doubtful. Some short-term jobs for builders, perhaps, but no long-term year-round jobs beyond a few landscapers. Instead, we would have more crowding in the summer, more traffic on Woods Hole Road, more demand on town services, possibly more emergencies in this small area because of the advanced age of all of the prospective residents, possibly at the height of summer when emergency vehicles would be hard-pressed to get into Woods Hole quickly. I don't dispute the idea that we need more options for older residents, and yes, one that is in walking distance of a town. But we need affordable housing, which, except for 4 affordable units buried in the rear of the main development, this is not proposed, and this potential development is within walking distance of only a small market, a small branch bank, and a few restaurants and gift shops. There are no health clinics, no senior center, a pittance of public transportation once an hour, and not after dark, to any kind of full-scale grocery or town center or health facilities or other businesses or services. Having monitored this builder's activities over the past couple of years, I've seen the number of open permits they have had out at one time go from 40 to 50 to 60 to 80. The sheer number is staggering, but more important is that many of the permits have been open for some length of time. As many have remarked, anecdotally, they don't understand why Longfellow's projects seem to take so long. I don't have an answer. A prime example is 587 Main Street, which has been closed up for well over a year. Apparently, they forgot to put in a basement, and the sewer hookup wasn't asked
Chairman?
for.
With
I
regard,
raised
with
this
regard to other
point.
projects, I ask you
Okay.
to please
The
stay on
worry
topic
here-
with zoning issues regarding this
I am.
project only, please.
The worry here, of course, is that the builders taking on of this kind of project that's proposed would take years and years, leading to massive disruption in the village with trucks coming and going, loud construction apparatus, and more unattractive site than is even now. And we don't even know if the project will ever end, so I support David's request for a very specific timeline. I do have major doubts about this particular company's appropriateness of the preservation of the dome. No experience, even with the team that they have described with shell structures and tension structures, let alone a historic one. There's little detail on the preservation techniques for the dome, neither the framing members and materials nor the outside skin and materials, or how they assured that the original historic frame could support a new skin. If there's documentation, we haven't seen it. This is not 2008, when the board gave approval for the previous permit. The economic climate was different. There has been growth in the town and the village, which must be taken into consideration. How much can this small area manage? The traffic has greatly increased and will only increase more so with the addition of the third slip at the Steamship Authority, the increase of parking spaces 100 yards away at the Hui property, the expansion of the Coast Guard Station campus, and the expansion of the Church of the Messiah directly across the street.
And Ms. Goldman, you are over your allotted time.
Okay, well,
However,
I'll just
you did submit a
I did submit my oral remarks for
Plethora
you,
of
so you
materials,
can
I'd
read
say.
through them. I'll just say also, though, I respect your comment about not making derogatory statements about individuals, and I gotta say, I don't feel like that standard has been held in my regard, and I'm pretty disturbed by the fact that people think they can toss my name around in disparaging ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Are we going to send the proponent a copy of this? He can have my copy now, and Noreen can send it to me. They may want to,
Sure.
you don't need it?
Well, it's part of the file. They're welcome to.
It just expedite things. And Noreen, could you send me a?
As it stands right now, it is 9:30. It's usually the end of business for the board. If we were to extend the meeting, we'd need a vote of the board.
I don't see any of those.
Right, there are a number of people here tonight, so I just want to kind of gauge, was anyone else out there intending on speaking tonight, members of the public? Okay, and I see one. Anyone else? Two? Three? All right, last call. Anyone else? So every time I look out there, another hand goes up. So we have 3 more people. Okay.
You need a motion to go beyond?
Motion to go beyond 9:30 and just
how
give
about
an amount of time. Okay.
I'd say 10, but no more than 5.
Because we do have on the agenda some open
We do.
meeting
That's true.
items.
We do.
I forgot.
If we could just wrap this up in 15 minutes.
All right.
Good point.
All right, so we'll allow those 3 people raise their hands to speak.
Well, if you need a motion,
We'll need the
let's vote it.
motion, but
So
we're.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion was made by Ken, second by Jerry to extend the meeting to 10 o'clock.
Yeah, with 15 more minutes allocated to the dome.
15 more minutes allocated to the dome. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Those three who raised their hands a moment ago, sorry, sir, go right ahead.
My name is David Fixler. I'm on the board of the Dome at Woods Hole. I live in Weston, Massachusetts, and I got involved in this a number of years ago.
Mr. Fixler, not
Yes.
to interrupt, do you speak on behalf of that board tonight, or do you speak in
Yes,
your
I,
individual
I'm,
capacity?
well, I'm speaking with concerns in opposition to the project.
As an individual or as?
No, as I'm representing the views of the board.
Of the board itself?
Yes.
Thank you, sorry.
You're welcome. Okay, I've been following the history. Well, first of all, let me back up for a second. I'm a preservation architect, but more particularly, I'm a preservation architect with an expertise in working on modern buildings. In that capacity, I have done a lot of restoration work on Boston City Hall Plaza, restored the United Nations headquarters in New York, and have worked on buildings by notable modern masters such as Louis Kahn, Alvar Aalto, Eero Saarinen, and I.M. Pei, the last of which I did actually with Mr. Kelleher, who I know well, as I also know John Watney and have great respect for both of them. So this is certainly in no way personal in that way. I have been following the course of this project since just after 2000, when the fate of the dome became the condition of the dome, and the fact of the sort of the decline of the Nautilus was becoming apparent. And first of all, I want to emphasize that I work with a lot of organizations around the world that are that look after modern buildings and shepherd them into useful second and third lives. And this is an extremely significant structure. This is a structure that has the attention of Docomomo International, which is based in Lisbon and in 85 countries around the world, and I am their local representative as the chairman of Docomomo US New England. And my specific concern, and I'm going to narrow it, I'm going to keep it very narrowly focused at this, is really the proximity of the new development. With all due respect to what Secretary Connolly said, I feel that the 18 feet is not a sufficient standoff given the size of the building and the amount of space that the dome really needs to sort of develop its perimeter and to be perceived in the way that it was meant to be perceived. And if you look at the way in which historic designations are given, setting is very important. The context is very important. And it's not to say that you can't build new buildings near old buildings, of course not. But you do need to leave an adequate standoff. And I'm not even suggesting that they had to save the two wings, but something needs to be done to give this building more room than it now has. The second is this is a very peculiar and particular dome. It's a unique structure. It's the oldest, of course, of Fuller's domes, but it's also the only one built this way. And what we have seen thus far from the reports, and again, this is nothing against John Watney, is we just haven't seen sufficient evidence that the kind of rigorous investigation that needs to be done to get to the right solution for this building will be undertaken. We're very concerned that that there's no indication that that will be undertaken. And so it is on that basis that I ask that you consider an alternative to what is being proposed, primarily because of the setting, but also to ensure that the proper rigorous treatment is given to the quality of the dome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fixler.
Can
I think
I
we
ask
have a question from a board member.
Quick question, so if 18 feet is not sufficient, do you have a recommendation?
It's proportional. I mean, if the building, I think 18 feet's probably too close for any building, but if the building were lower, it would help. You sort of need a kind of better proportional relationship there. And I think in other words, if you had enough standoff that you could retain the existing entry and the wing and still have some space there, that's probably going to be sufficient. But I hate to give a number without giving it real in-depth study. But suffice to say, looking at the drawings, looking at the elevations, it's crowded. And it will make the dome feel like a toy. And that's really, it deserves better than that. That's all.
Another follow-up, if you may?
Sure.
You would then, given your credentials, take great heed as to what the Mass Historical Commission recommends, as well as the local Conservation Commission, and I don't mean this to be disparaging, they may not be concerned with the 8 feet, 18 feet. They may.
That is their prerogative. One thing I can tell you about this business, having been in it now for, working with modern buildings for almost 30 years and in the business for 40, it's all relative. There are, it is all based on judgment and best opinion. My experience and looking at a building like this and looking at the scale of what's there and what was intended and how the original Nautilus worked with it, which I think was very well. I just feel that this is too crowded and it's inappropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there were 2 other people out there. Yes, sir.
Hi there, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Bob Moore. I actually live in Rhode Island, which I hope is not a problem. I'm on the board of the Dome at Woods Hole as well. I guess I first want to say that I really don't want to be here today. Not only am I non-confrontational by nature, I'd much rather be here in support of a project than challenging it. But I also know Mark. We've been dealing with each other for the last couple of years. He's a sincere person. I think he has good intentions, but I think on the question of the dome, it's unclear as to whether this is the best plan. And in my opinion, it's not. For the following reason, I think I've spent the last couple of years spending all of my spare time that I can spare researching the domes. I taught at Studio, Roger Williams on the dome. I interviewed a lot of the original construction team, some of whom have now died. And I've written some of the first comprehensive historical and technical papers on the dome. And really, when Buckminster Fuller came here in '53, he came here with his students and he came here. He didn't come to New York or Boston or anywhere else. He came to Falmouth. And what happened at that little knoll on that piece of property in Falmouth was something very special. These people came from all over the world, people inspired to make a better world, something more sustainable, more holistic, sort of really motivated to build a better future. These people came here, and that leaves a legacy in the town of Falmouth that has global significance. And I think that's something that every board that this project comes in front of needs to consider. When that dome was built, of course, the plan was entirely different. The closest building was right here, I believe, and it was at a different angle and 1 story lower, or 1.5 stories lower. And the result of that building, when the day it opened in the summer of 1954, it had a clear skin. So the hemispherical dome was covered in clear skin. You had a 360-degree view of the sky. You had sweeping views of Little Harbor, the village of Woods Hole, and Vineyard Sound beyond. That view shed, and I think to follow up on the question that was posed to David, it's about view shed, not just proximity, right? So as I'm hearing all the questions and comments about the various oppositions to it, I think it's this part of the project, obviously, that's the issue. So it strikes me that that's an area that, should the owner be able to reconsider, I think it will check a lot of boxes for people. Proximity, encroaching on the dome, the view shed be respected, to sort of allow the dome to be in the spirit of which that it was originally created, even if it has a new life, a new purpose, a new future. I think if we were to reconsider that area, I think it's a no-brainer. It's a good project. But until then, it hurts me to see something so close to that building. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Yeah, Mr. Moore, I just had a question. So, when the dome was originally sited there, do you have any idea what the proximity, what the envelope of the view shed was?
What was sweeping? There's nothing in its way. I mean, this building that was here was first 1 story, then they built it up to 2, I believe. And so you could see everything. The vegetation was much lower at that time. There are pictures, which I would love to show you, of before the skin was installed by one of the construction crew named Barry Benepe, who's now 92. He took a picture from inside the dome with the airplane house framed in that framework of the dome. It was beautiful. And that was the spirit of the dome. And So the views were much better. Some of the vegetation on neighboring properties has grown up, not much you can do for that, but it's certainly now a filtered view, but it's there, it has potential, it's great. That's why his building is there, for the view. But if we could just share that view a little bit, I think that would be great for the dome and for his property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I believe there was one more person.
I want to apologize to everybody. My name is Jonathan Goldman. I live at 12 Sydney Street with my wife, who I consider extremely brave for what she stood up to talk about tonight, while she's being pilloried and not allowed to respond. I want to apologize because I was walking down Woods Hole Road, probably about 6 years ago, something like that, and I kept looking up this amazing architectural piece of amazing piece of architecture, and I thought, I know the history of this. Maybe there could be something that could be commensurate with that level of history. This particular piece of land is very, very important to the village. In 1850, Joseph Story Fay came to Woods Hole by rail. While waiting for the ferry, he walked around the village. And now I'm basically not quoting, but I'm paraphrasing from Spritzel, the Woods Hole Historical Society's little booklet, pamphlet. He walked around the village with his wife, and they said, well, wait a minute, we don't have to go to the vineyard. This is really beautiful here. He then came and bought a ginormous piece of property, which is part of this property that we're talking about, past the golf course up to what we now know as Webster Woods. It was a formidable purchase, and he was the first summer resident. Okay, if we jump ahead to having Buckminster Fuller, who happened to be in the area, as Bob said, teaching, because he didn't really teach anywhere. He would go around and teach in different schools. As an educator, he brought his students. His students built this property. Built this structure, I mean. He built the structure in 2 weeks, no scaffolding, and it's lasted for 66 years. That's a remarkable thing, both for the continuity of what he had designed and for what these kids had put together in 2 weeks, which is really, truly remarkable. Of course, hurricanes don't like a brand new material called Mylar, so it didn't last for very long with the original skin, as they said. So it really does make me question, as somebody who has spent a career working with tensile structures, knowing how complex this is, and to not keep it within the context of the original design, I think would be a real pity. I did think an art center would be a vital possibility. From the plans that I have seen, it is cut up into orange slices like gores, and not really seeing any multiple forms of egress, so I'm not sure exactly how that all shakes out. Maybe it's too early. But I do know that development of this nature is very, very limiting, because once we get 43 units, which I think is too dense, or 29 units, which was originally what was approved, it's unsustainable. We can't go in that direction anymore. When you look at the Cape Cod Commission's reviews, you see from 1950 until the present day how this highly valuable waterfront property has disappeared. And it will continue to disappear as waters rise, and yes, as climate change does have a major impact, as we all know, because that's what happens in Woods Hole. That's the science that we do there. So I just wanted to read you one very short little letter from somebody who I don't personally know, but they sent this to me, and I thought this was very moving. She said, "We're writing to ask you that you not grant a special permit to Woods Hole Partners LLC to increase the density of their proposed project at the former Nautilus site. Woods Hole is a small village, and any increase in density adversely affects the character of the village." And we're talking about character here, whether it's character assassination or character, okay? There seems no rationale for request. Yes, I'm almost done.
No, well, you've exceeded your time limit.
course
and
I have.
We're
Okay.
up against the time that we voted on. Please feel free to submit that letter to the
It's
record.
been submitted. I just wanted to make a point.
Oh,
The point was, well, you're not gonna want to hear it, so.
well, no, it's submitted to the record. We've
No,
stated
the
that
part
we'll-
that I was getting to, but that's okay. It's okay. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. And my point to you, sir, is that everything that's submitted to the record, we will read.
I know.
Either we have already, or we will. There's been a number of things submitted from members of the public, both in favor and against, and we do take all this public comment very seriously, so.
So Chairman Hurry, I guess we need to motion to continue this, right? To a date in the future.
We would. Attorney Clower?
Thank you, Mr. Hurry, and I appreciate your indulgence. Before we leave tonight, I did type up a narrative of my presentation, which I intended to submit, given the
Certainly
kind of
can.
span of it. So I'll submit that for the record. I wanted to respond very quickly to Mr. Fixler's comment.
Let's just continue.
Yeah, we're really up against it, Attorney Clower.
Fair enough, I'll save my comment for the next time then.
Thank you. Did you have a date in mind for,
Do I have a date in mind?
for continuing, I think?
As quickly
maybe-
as we can.
2 weeks? I mean, it's a lot of information. Well, I don't know, Noreen, 2 weeks?
I may not be here.
Oh, that's not
Given
good.
the
There was the possibility, I believe, of February 21st or March 7th.
Well, I'd rather sooner than later.
Okay.
Do we
And-
need, what about venue?
All right, and given the capacity issues of this room,
Both are available.
Maureen, I think for February 21st, is this room's available as well as an overflow
Yes,
room?
with overflow in the town hall.
Okay.
Mr.
Is
Hurry,
it, I
can
just have a question. Is it possible just to get a room large enough versus using overflow rooms?
Well, that would be the point, isn't
The
it?
Herman
So
room.
that
Well,
would be
versus
It's an issue of availability.
March 7th.
March 7th
It's
would be
either
the only?
February 21st with here with an overflow room or March 7th with the Herman room.
But we don't know how many people were in the overflow room.
Well, that's what I mean, we don't have the info.
Well, maybe Tom Butt could,
Well, we know it's of interest.
yes, but
I'm not, obviously I can't speak for opposition. I don't know that we will have as many people with us next time, which
But the
I'm
other
perfectly fine
point
with.
is, there's a lot of other permits they need, so we're not holding them up by waiting till March 7th, are we?
You are not.
So let's do March 7th.
So let's do March 7th. Can I make that motion then, that we continue this to March 7th?
Yeah, I'll second it.
At the Herman room, 6:30.
can we get the Herman room?
That's
It is available.
Reserved.
Okay, that sounds,
All right, so that motion was made by Ken and I think second by Ed.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we do still have matters to attend to, but I doubt anyone's really interested in our open meeting agenda items. We'll wait a minute for you to filter out.
should rush them out.
Everyone, thank you for coming tonight, but if you could please make your way to the exit. We do have some things still on the agenda.
And you have site plan review next week.
Thank you very much.
There were a few good points raised.
Be interested to see what the historic commission says.
Okay, everyone's filtering out. Onto our open meeting items. We do have the minutes from January 10th, 2019. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Yep.
Yes.
Does anyone have any revisions to make at this time?
Well, I mean, I am.
Seeing none.
Move to approve?
Move to approve by Ed, second by Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, and second, we have board updates. Don't think we exactly have any board updates. Anyone have anything? No?
No.
All right. Discussing a date for a future workshop. We're waiting for people to be appointed to the board. As we said last week, we do have the permanent position
You're good
open.
at that.
And there's the possibility of after that also having associate position open. Future agenda items, do we have any?
So wait a second, go back to the issue of filling the vacancies.
Filling the vacancies, so I believe that it's been moved to, February 11th.
That's what I think, yeah.
Yep. Jerry Patamas, Bob Dugan, and someone you may
Mark
remember,
Hool.
Mark Hool has applied for the position.
So that's gonna be selectmen's hearings?
That's gonna be the selectmen's hearing Monday, February 11th.
Okay.
So depending on who they select, there might be an associate position open as well, so. And while I'm at it, there's the joint meeting with the selectmen, the planning board, and conservation, and any other boards invited to that as well.
Water quality, I think.
That's
When is that? Excuse me?
the 26th
Week
Saturday
from Saturday, right?
at Falmouth Academy. Is it at 8, 8:30?
8:30.
8:30?
I mean, 8, I think.
That's the one I said I'd be late because I have a meeting at the
Sure.
base
Yep.
at 8.
26 Jan?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that what day of the week is that?
Saturday.
And you said 8 AM?
8 a.m.
8:30.
at Falmouth Academy.
8:30, wasn't it?
I'll send the agenda around again.
Okay,
Sure. Just a reminder for everyone. All right. Any other future agenda items? None? Board Administrative Review of Special Permit 97-17, Gary and Mary Ellis, 39 Rebecca Ann Lane in East Falmouth. This is up for a one-year review of the home occupation.
These are the pie people?
Yes.
The pie people, I remember.
The pie person?
Oh, there it is.
Did we get any objections or anything?
No.
Have we had anything?
Well,
No, there was a log submitted,
Yeah.
but
As we required, right?
Right?
Hey, you look at the log, it was no-brainer.
Right?
So what's our action to,
so we just need to renew the permit? Or
No.
vote to extend it, or?
I think you could just grant, and then it would be without end, unless, there was
Yeah, unless
an
there's a
issue
violation.
arose.
Yeah.
We conditioned it based upon, I think it was,
It was the commercial.
abutters' concerns and
About delivery.
about deliveries,
Delivery,
and
correct.
after a year, I guess we haven't heard anything.
all right.
We don't have jurisdiction over that.
Yeah, I don't think we have jurisdiction over that.
So we've done the one-year review, there's no further action we need to take?
I think we,
You didn't hear any adverse comments, the log was submitted. So our action is completed.
right, so now the question is whether to extend it, or perhaps make the special permit permanent?
And make the special permit
Yeah, I would
Yeah, I think
think
that
that would be.
And make the motion.
Motion was made by Ken, and is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And thank you for sticking around, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Could have taken you out of
I
order.
tried.
Yeah, we should have.
Oh, I'm glad you had
I tried
fun.
to take you out of order, but we didn't
Wasn't
find
here
it.
early, I don't think, was he?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Well, somebody left a,
that's it for tonight.